completely enclosed. That was a tongue twister. Monuments are fixed objects used to locate the point of beginning, POB, all corners of the parcels or ends of boundary segments, and the location of intersecting boundaries. In colonial times, a monument might have been a natural object such as a stone, a large tree, lake, or stream. It also may have been a street, fence, or other marker. Today, monuments are iron pins or concrete posts placed by the U.S. Corps of Engineers, other government departments, or trained private surveyors. Measurements often include the word more or less because the location of the monuments is more important than the distance between them. The actual distance between the monuments take precedence over any linear measurement in the description because monuments can be moved. Surveyors give their final metes and bounds reference in terms of cardinal points and distance. They include the statement to the point of beginning, POB, to ensure closure to and remove if an error in footage prevents closure. Because such items are subject to the whims of nature and vandals, their accuracy is sometimes suspect. As a result, surveyors rely mostly heavily on benchmarks discussed later in this unit to mark their work accurately and permanently. An example of metes and bounds description of a parcel land pictured in figure 4.1 follows. All that the certain piece or parcel of land situates in Wayne Township, Clinton County, Pennsylvania, bounded and described in accordance with a survey made by H. Richard OHL, registered surveyor, dated November 9th, 1984, as follows. Beginning at an iron pin on the easterly...
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there just for a minute. Okay, so go over to the next page. I'm going to read this to you. All right, do you see 4.1? You see the diagram there in your book?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to read this to you. If you see the point of beginning, you see where it says point of beginning, it's towards like the top of the page?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
As I read this to you, you can follow it, okay? So beginning at an iron pin at the easterly line of Pennsylvania Route 18013, which iron pin is on the boundary line between the parcel to be conveyed and land of the United States of America, thence along the land of the said United States of America north 70 degrees, 41 minutes and 10 seconds, east a distance of 66, 27 100th, 66.27 feet to an iron pin. Thence, continuing along the same, south 31 degrees, 23 minutes, 30 seconds, east distance of 677 and 1/10, which is 677.1 feet to an iron pin on the northerly line of Township Route 425, thence along the northerly line of said Township Route 425, the following 5 courses and distances. 1, south 70 degrees, 44 minutes, west a distance of 51 and 5/10, which is 51.5 feet to an iron pin. 2, south 60 degrees, 0 minutes west, a distance of 560, 36, 6/10, 536.6 feet to an iron pin, north 29 degrees, 54 minutes, west, a distance of 13 and 5/10, which is 13.5 feet to an iron pin. 4, south 61 degrees, 54 minutes, west, a distance of 80 and 5/10, which is 80.5 feet to an iron pin. 5, south 74 degrees, 5 minutes, west, a distance of 54,000 feet to an iron pin, thence along Pennsylvania Route 18013, north 34 34 degrees, 40 minutes, west, a distance of 9 and 6/10, which is 59.6 feet, one iron pin, then continuing along Pennsylvania Route 18013 north, 17 degrees, 28 minutes, east, a distance of 872.8, which is 872.8 feet, one iron pin, the place of beginning, containing an area of 6.74 acres. Okay, now, did anybody at all follow that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I followed it, but when you did the 536, you said 560, so it's always going to be like a north, south, east, or west, right? Or north or south?
Yes, you know what it is, or it'll say, northwesterly. It's not always going to be north
No.
exactly.
No,
but
because you said 560, but that's supposed to be south 60, right? The green down Township Route 425, the IP should be south 60, and then 6/10 west, because you said 560, so I'm a little confused. Is that supposed to be south?
south 60 degrees, 0 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you said 560, but it is south 60, right?
on Township
Yeah.
Township Road 425. Yeah, it's south.
Okay. No, not that one. Township, yes, but that's correct. It's south
Well,
60 degrees.
You know
right?
what? I don't know, but I'm going to tell you, when you get a chance, you're reviewing your material, if you can, take a look at it and try to, just with your finger to go along and sketch it out. Now, are you going to
No,
need
that's
to
not
do
the
this?
question. I understand that. My question is it always going to be a north or south instead of a number first? That's what I'm trying to understand. I understand all of that.
Okay, no, all different legal descriptions. You can see where they say beginning in a northerly direction, going, and they don't go into all the degrees all the time. They'll say 100. Okay, this example up here, point of beginning, and then it'll give you what the point of beginning is. North on Jones Road, heading east on Skull Drive, 200 feet. So you're not always going to be exact. Okay.
No, okay, that's all right. You missing what I'm saying, but I understand it now. I got it. You missed what I'm saying. I got it now. You said 560, but it's actually south 60. That's what I was trying to understand. It's a S. I'm looking at it now. I can see it. I put my glasses on.
Okay, good. So you're going to, when you have a chance, just go through them and
Okay.
just to get an idea. Nobody's going to expect that you're going to be reading all these deeds. Okay.
Okay.
You don't need to really know that unless maybe there's an issue or you think there's an issue.
Okay.
And you may want to do it. The norm is, these are gone over by the title company. They're going to review it. They make sure that they're accurate. However, if there's a reason why you need to look at it for whatever reason, you're going to pull a plat because you have a question, something doesn't look right to you, and you want to start reading the legal description, you'll know how to do it.
Okay.
Okay? You'll understand what a meets and bounds is. Okay?
Thank you. Mhm.
Okay.
But I guess that takes some practice though, right?
Yeah, you know what? I did one recently. I had to do it. I was kind of like following it along. I mean, you'll be able to figure it out. You really will be. Takeaway from here is that in Pennsylvania, when we do the legal descriptions, they use meets and bounds. Okay, so when you see one, you're not going to go, oh, what is this and what does this mean? You'll know it's just a legal description of the property and it's the meets and bounds. When you're looking at a subdivision plan from a plat, you're going to know if, you see on like a deed, it says lot, it'll say like block 20, lot 14. You'll be able to look at that and just put your finger on it and go, this is what I want to look at. Okay.
Mhm.
But this is, I always put them in my agreement of sale. And you should also do that because the street address, and I'm going to give you an example. I just sold the house this week and it was very odd. The street address was 822 Pleasant Avenue. However, when I went into public records, I couldn't find any information on 822 Pleasant Avenue. It came up as 0 Norton Avenue. Well, the property was a corner property. So the one street was Pleasant and the other street was Norton, right? I don't know how they recorded it that way. So the mailing address is Pleasant Avenue. But now I'm finding, when I'm going through the records, I'm seeing this Norton. So what I did was I pulled out the deed. I sent an email to my office, said, do me a favor, send me the new deed and send me the, the current deed. And I looked at it, and it was interesting because they didn't even have a street address on the deed, which is very unusual. But what they went by meets and bounds, and they said to me, we don't care what the street address is, as long as the legal description is accurate, that's all we care about. Okay? Now, the tax office, all they care about is the person is getting their mail so they can pay their taxes. So that particular property comes up two ways, and they're both accurate. But the most accurate is going to be your block, your lot number, and your meets and bounds. Okay, addresses. Okay.
Is there any way of fixing that? Like, let's say if the the owner wanted to have an official address, is there any way of going about doing that?
Well, I don't really know what the answer is to that. I mean, I think the woman, she was living there for like 40 years and she used 822 and got her mail all the time. That's all she cared about. She's now in a nursing home. And now my client is aware of it because I said to her, even though this is the mailing address, this is the address that comes up when you put it in your GPS, right? There is also some documentation with the same legal description on Norton. So what is accurate? I don't know. I mean, she could go to the township building, and would they do something? They probably would say, look, it's been like this since, way back. There's no purpose in, changing this. Okay. Yeah, so that's why the legal descriptions, they're the most accurate. All right. I always add the legal description as far as the block or the parcel number or something in addition to. So when the title company is pulling information, I know that they're pulling accurate information. And I'll tell you, I was showing a house one time to a client. It was like really bizarre. And I said to her, I'm going to meet you at, I gave her the address, right? Now, I go to the address and I'm standing there and I'm waiting for them. And, the sale sign is on the lawn. It's, it's the right, brokerage. I call my client up and I said, where are you? I'm waiting here at the property. And she said, I'm at the property. And I said, well, I'm standing right here. I don't see you. And she goes, well, I'm standing here too. And I'm looking around. I'm like, well, where are you? So she tells me where she's at. And I'm saying, what is wrong with this? Well, I was standing at the right property on road, but the road curved and it became, I think, circle or something like that. The same address. And in front of that property, there was a sale sign on that property. So she thought she was at the right property. And I said, no, you know what? The road is curving. Start walking up the street and you'll see me standing there. Now, that would be very easy to confuse. And so, I had to double check all the time to make sure that I was putting road and not circle or, whatever, because they were both up for sale. But I also did put the block, the lot number, and the parcel number. So when I got all the information back from the title company, I really looked at that thoroughly to make sure that the right house or the right property was being deeded over to him. It did not happen to me, but I did hear a story, and it was a story that some realtor was getting sued up in New York, a similar situation. They put the address on, and the address was similar to another property, and the wrong property was transferred over and conveyed, and it was like this big lawsuit. So after, you hear these stories, right? And after I heard that, I'm like, I could see how that can happen now. Because when I first read the story, I'm like, I don't know how something like that could happen. But after that, when I was out with my client, I'm like, whoa, I can see where that would happen. So I just make sure I put it in there. And then I do double check it just on the title to make sure everything looks okay. Okay. So who wants to read next? Anybody want to read about the lot and blocks?
I'll read where we're at. The lot and block.
58. Lot and block.
Okay. The lot and block recorded plat description uses lot and block numbers referred to in a plat map file in the recorder of deeds office in the county where the land is located. The plat map is a map of a town, a section, or a subdivision indicating the location and boundaries of individual properties. The lot and block system is used mostly in subdivisions and urban areas. A lot and block survey is performed in 2 steps. First, a large parcel of land is described either by the meets and bounds method or by rectangular survey. Once this large parcel is surveyed, it is broken into smaller parcels. As a result, a lot and block legal description always refers to a prior meet and bounds or rectangular survey description. For each parcel described under the lot and block system, the lot refers to the numerical designation of a particular parcel. The block refers to the name of the subdivision under which the map is recorded. The block reference is drawn from the early 1900s when a city block was the most common type of subdivided property. Description of a lot in a recorded subdivision will include the lot and block number of the lot, name and the subdivision plan, and county and state in which the subdivision is located. The lot and block system starts with the subdivision plat prepared by a licensed surveyor or an engineer. On this plat, the land is divided into numbered or lettered lots and blocks and streets or access roads for public use are indicated. Lot sizes and street details must be described completely and must comply with all local ordinances and requirements. When properly signed and approved, the subdivision plat is recorded in the county in which the land is located. The plat becomes part of the legal description. In describing a lot from a recorded subdivision plat, 3 identifiers are used: lot and block number, name or number of the subdivision plat, name of the county and state. A lot and block description always refers to a prior meets and bounds description. The lot and block system is used, at least in part, in all states. Some states have passed plat acts that specify the smallest parcel that may be sold without a subdivision plat map being prepared, approved and recorded. In Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code defines a subdivision as 2 or more lots, tracts, or parcels unless it is for agricultural purposes. The following is an example of a lot and block description. Would you like for me to read that as well?
Sure.
Lots 2, 3, and 4 in block 5 of L. Robinson subdivision of the property beginning at a point on the north side of Main Road, 175 feet east from the corner formed by the intersection of the south side of Main Road and the east side of State Route 54. Thence. Want me to continue?
If you want to, go ahead.
Okay, rectangular government survey system. The rectangular survey system, sometimes called the government survey method, was established in 1785 and standardized the description of land acquired by the newly formed federal government. By dividing the land into rectangles, the survey provided land descriptions by describing the rectangles in which the land was located. The system is based on sets of 2 intersecting lines, principal meridians and baselines. The principal meridians run north and south, and the baselines run east and west. Both are located by reference to degrees of longitude and latitude. Each principal meridian has a name or number and is crossed by a baseline. Each principal meridian and its corresponding baseline are used to survey a definite area of land indicated on the map by boundary lines. There are 37 principal meridians in the United States. In Pennsylvania, land parallel to meridians and baselines is divided into ranges and townships, respectively, forming imaginary squares known as townships. Townships are further divided into sections, then into fractions of sections. Each township contains 36 sections. Each section is 1 mile square or 640 acres. These descriptions frequently combine with meets and bounds or lot and block descriptions to define smaller or irregularly shaped parcels of land. Again, Pennsylvania does not describe land using a rectangular survey system.
Okay, so now that you read that, you have an understanding of it, it's not going to be on your exam. We don't use it in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's good to know about it, so when you're studying, you don't need to review it again, okay? But you could say on the test, they may ask you a question, you know, in regards to meets and bounds, give you a plat plan, and they may ask you to, you know, if a property begins at a certain point, like goes north, you know, like 125 feet, they may ask you like, what, you know, what lot does that refer to? You might be asked a question like that, okay? All right, preparing a survey. Does anybody want to read that? William?
I can read.
Okay,
Yes, preparing the survey.
okay.
You can go with them. Go ahead.
Legal descriptions should not be altered or combined without adequate information from a surveyor or title attorney. In Pennsylvania, a land surveyor is licensed professional who is trained and authorized to locate and determine the legal description of any parcel of land. The surveyor does this by preparing two documents, a survey and a survey sketch. The survey states the property's legal description. The survey sketch shows the location and dimensions of the parcel. When a survey also shows the location, size, and shape of buildings on the lot, it is referred to as a spot survey. Figure 4.3. Legal descriptions should be copied with extreme care. An incorrectly worded legal description in a sales contract may result in a conveyance of more or less land than the parties intended. For example, damages suffered from an incorrect description could be excessive if buildings and improvements need to be moved. Because the land upon which the improvements were made is not owned. Often, even punctuation is extremely critical. Title problems can arise from the buyer who seeks to convey the property at a future date. If the contract can be corrected before the sale is closed, the licensee risks losing a commission and may be held liable for damages suffered by an injured party because of an improperly worded legal description. It is very important for licensees to be aware of various surveys and their uses. Not all surveys include surveyor liability and warranties of accuracy. Some surveys, such as improvement, location certificate, ILC, are not full surveys. An ILC is prepared in a shorter time frame and at less cost. It provides only the location of the structures and improvements as related to the property boundaries. It is important to know and understand land units and measurements because they are an integral part of legal descriptions. Some commonly used measurements are listed in figure 4.4. The acre, mile, foot, and most useful in the meets and bounds description, while the rectangular survey system references sections and townships. Should I do this unit in land measurement?
No, not yet. I want to point something out. Okay, so you could have a regular survey that is describing your, your lot. But if there's a building on here, that's a spot survey. Don't forget that, because that could be on a test. Okay. Any structure, a building, a house, a shed, once you start describing and they start sketching out where there are buildings, it's a spot survey. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the other thing here is with your measurements, you really should know these measurements. Some of them are going to be a little bit easier to remember. One of the most important ones are going to be an acre, because when you're looking in your MLS or you're looking at a description, you're going to look at, what is the frontage and, what is the property, but you're also going to be looking at what is the acreage, and it's usually like a point whatever. If you're in the city, once you go outside of the city, you might have a client that says, I really want a single home with land, then, some kind of property. And you would have to know, well, what kind of property do you want, like quarter of an acre? Do you want an acre? I mean, what is it that you're looking for? Now, they're probably not going to know exactly, but they'll have an idea. So when you go to do your searches for properties, you're going to be putting in there, a quarter acre or whatever. So you should have an idea of how many feet are in an acre. And the same thing with when you're looking to read one of these maps, you're looking at like a square mile, you should know that there's, 160 acres that are in a square mile. So highlight them. You want to go and you want to review that, okay?
Mhm.
Janet, can you just repeat what you said about what was going to be on the test? You said it was important.
Spot survey.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, spot survey, all it means is it's a regular survey, but, it has a spot in addition to that's being surveyed. That spot could be a house. It could be a barn. And, usually when they're doing spot surveys, though, anything that's a physical structure or an improvement on that property is drawn on the survey itself, on the sketch. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, measuring elevations. Anybody want to read that?
Measuring elevations. Just as surface rights must be identified, surveyed, and described, so must rights to the property above the Earth's surface. Recall from Unit 1 that land includes space above the ground. In the same way, land may be measured and divided into parcels. The air itself may also be divided. An owner may subdivide the air above the land into air lots. Air lots are composed of airspace within specific boundaries located over a parcel of land. The condominium laws passed in all states require that a registered land surveyor prepare a plat map that shows the elevations of floor and ceiling surfaces and the vertical boundaries of each unit with the reference to an official addendum. A unit's floor, for instance, might be 60 feet above the datum and its ceiling 69 feet. Typically, a separate plat is prepared for each floor in the condominium building. Pennsylvania's Condominium Property Act requires that registered land surveyor prepare a plat showing the elevations of the floor and ceilings on a vertical plane and the boundaries of the condominium unit with the reference to an official datum. Typically, a separate plat will be prepared for each floor in the condominium building. The following is an example of legal description of a condominium apartment unit that includes a fractional share of common elements of the building and land. Good, so read that.
Sure.
that certain unit in the property known, named and identified in the declaration plan referred to below King's Arms condominium, situate the village of Westover, Hampton Township, Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, which has been submitted to the provisions of the Unit Property Act of Pennsylvania, Act of July 3rd, 1963, PL 196. I don't understand what that is, okay, but it's a measurement, right? Is that right?
Mhm. It's okay,
By
just keep
By
reading.
recording in the office of the Recorder of Deeds of Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, of declaration dated May 20th, 1975, recorded in miscellaneous book 215, page 836, and a declaration plan dated May 21st, 1975, recorded in the office of Recorder of Deeds, Cumberland County, in Plan Book 26, page 70, and the Code of Regulations being Exhibit B, and of said declaration described as follows. Being and designated on the declaration plan as Unit A3, detached garage, said garage designated on the declaration plan as Unit A3G, together with an undivided interest pertinent to the unit of the common elements as defined in the declaration of 5.26%. The unit is municipally known as the Three Kings Arms Village of Westover, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, being the same premises which the Pennsboro Home Incorporated by deed dated August 1st, 1975, recorded in the Office of Recorder of Deeds, Cumberland County, in Deed Book E, Volume 26, page 359, granted and conveyed unto Thomas D. Smith, seller herein. Subsurface rights can be legally described in the same manner as air rights. However, they are not measured below the datum rather than above it. Subsurface descriptions are used not only for coal mining, petroleum drilling, and utility line location, but also for multi-story condominiums, both residential and commercial, that have several floors below ground level.
Okay, so when you're reading this chapter and you're doing your review, you don't have to keep reading these legal descriptions. It's just to get you familiar with what they look like.
So that was
Okay.
the legal description.
It was a legal description.
Gotcha.
So you don't need to know, you don't need to memorize these legal descriptions because they're going to be different for every single property. Every
Mhm.
property has its own unique legal description, okay? So you can skip over this unless, you have one that you're going to be measuring out. But other than that, just look at it and notice, that they have a point of beginning, or if you're doing your elevation, they start out basically the same way, being that, and then being, and, so you just, when you see one, you'll know, oh, this looks like it's meets and bounds, okay? Or it looks like a legal description, or it looks like an elevation. All right. So we have one more section here on the datum, and then we're going to take our test, and then we can take a break because the next chapter is going to be really long. Okay. Do you want to continue reading that, or do you want me to read it?
This is the last page. A datum is a point, line, or surface from which elevations are measured and indicated. For the purpose of the United States Geological Survey, USGS, datum is defined as the mean sea level of New York Harbor. However, virtually all large cities have local official datum that is used instead of USGS datum. A surveyor would use datum in determining the height of a structure or establishing a grade of a street. In practice, all large cities have established a local official datum used in place of the USGS datum. For instance, the official datum for Chicago is known as Chicago City Datum. It is a horizontal plane and corresponds to the low water level of Lake Michigan in 1847. the year in which the datum was established, and is considered to be at zero elevation. Although a surveyor's measurement of elevation based on a USGS datum will differ from one computed according to the local datum, it can be translated to the elevation based on a USGS. Cities with local datums also have designated official local benchmarks, which are assigned to permanent identifying numbers. Local benchmarks simplify surveyors' work because the basic benchmark may be miles away. Benchmarks are permanent reference points that have been established throughout the United States. They are usually embossed brass markers set into solid concrete or asphalt basis. While used some degree for surface measurements, the principal reference used is for marketing datums.
Okay, so in this section over here, you should know what air lots are. That will be important. You should also know what datum is and a benchmark. So we're going to move into quiz 4. Okay, I will read the question and you can answer it. Now we're also
What was the first word that you said we should know?
You should know air lots.
Okay.
Okay.
What is
and
it?
You'll see it's
What was
in
that again?
bold on page 62. So if you want to highlight that, you should know what datum is. You should know what a benchmark is. Okay.
Mhm.
So we're going to go into the quiz. When we get to measuring here, one of these is going to take, or two of them might take a little bit more time. But let's start with quiz 4, number 1. Monument is used in which type of a legal description? Is it lot and block, meets and bounds, rectangular survey, or street address?
Meets and bounds.
Is it meets and bounds?
Meets and bounds. Okay, if you don't know what a monument is, just go into your vocabulary and read what it is. Okay, so an acre contains 100 and
Sorry.
Oh, no.
Did she
okay.
finish the question first?
She did finish it.
I ain't hear it.
Number 1.
The
Does
question,
everybody have their your audio? Is it all on mute? Okay. Let me do it again. Monument is used in which type of legal description? Lot and block, meets and bounds, rectangular survey, or street address?
B.
Meets and bounds. An acre contains 160 square feet, 43,560 square feet, 640 square feet, or 360 degrees.
B.
Okay. Who's required by the condominium laws to prepare a plat map showing the elevation of floors and ceiling surfaces? A registered land surveyor, a licensed real estate appraiser, an environmental site assessor, or any responsible party?
A.
Yes. Which of the following is most likely to be included in a legal description of a condominium description? A, subsurface description of the piling supporting the building. B, fractional share of the building's common elements. C, location of amenities offered by the building. Or D, description of the other residents in the building.
B.
B.
Yes. A map that shows the location, size, and shape of buildings located on a lot is called a survey sketch, legal description, a plat map, or a spot survey.
D.
What is it?
Spot survey. D.
Okay. So when you get to the next page, you're going to see that you have a plat map there. And we're going to be using that for some of the following questions. Okay. So you're going to have to really take a look at this and try to follow this. Number 6 says, which is true. Lot 9, Block A, is larger than Lot 12 in the same block. So now you're going to have to go to Lot 9 in Block A. Do you see where it says Block A on the left-hand side of the plat map there? Okay, somebody has they're not muted. Okay. So you got to go through these and you just have to look at them in order to know the right answer. So you have Lot 9. See where Lot 9 is? Well, I'm going to give you the measurement. It's 90 by 120. And it's saying it's larger than Lot 12. So now go up to 12 and you have, what?
Is it the same?
It's false.
It is the same. So, okay, so that's false. We're looking for a true answer. It is the same. It's false. Now you go to B. The plat for the lots on the southerly side of Wolf Road between Goodrich Boulevard and Kearney Street is found on sheet 3. Okay, so now you're going to have to look for the plat, okay, the side of Wolf Road between Goodrich Boulevard and Kearney Street.
I'm sorry, what was 6 again?
Well,
We're doing that one now.
we don't know. We're going through them.
Okay,
Okay, we're trying to figure out which one here is true.
okay.
There isn't a sheet.
That one's false because
Right,
it's on sheet 4.
that's right. It is on sheet 4. So now let's go to Lot 8 in Block A. It's that lot, has the largest road frontage.
That
So-
was true. That's the true one.
It is true. I mean, that's pretty obvious once you read them. So C is the correct answer. Okay, 7 is, which lot has the most frontage on Jasmine Lane? Now you got to go to Jasmine Lane and kind of take a look at it and see which one looks like it has the most.
The block 12?
No.
I picked lot 1, number C, because lot 1, hold on. Lot 1 looked like it had the most to me. I could be wrong now.
Yes. But that is the
Lot 1,
answer.
okay.
It is lot 1. Okay, so now we're going to start at the beginning. I'm going to read this to you, so just follow this, okay? Beginning at the intersection of the east line of Goodrich Boulevard and the south line of Jasmine Lane. Does everybody see where Goodrich is up top?
Yeah.
Okay, and you see where Jasmine is? So now what you're looking for is, you're looking for the east line of Goodrich Boulevard and the south line of Jasmine Lane. Running south, so now we're going to go south. And notice on bottom, you can see where the legend has north going like towards the right, towards the next page. So south would be in the other direction. Okay, and the south line of Jasmine Lane, and running south along the east line of Goodrich Boulevard, a distance of 230 feet. So that would take you to takes you over through 2 of the lots there. Thence east, parallel to the north line of Wolf Road, a distance of 195 feet. Okay, so you're going through the easement, the utility easement, and you're heading down. Then northeasterly on a course N22, that's north, 22 degrees east, a distance of 135 feet. So now you're back on Jasmine Lane. And then northwesterly along the south line of Jasmine Lane to the point of beginning. Which lots are described here? Well, we have 1, 15, 3, and 2 we just went through, right?
Would that would be C, right? 1, 2, 3, and 15.
That would be C. Do you see how you would read a legal description? Once you do them a few times, it gets pretty easy. Okay, so
I've got a question regarding the number 7. Which is the correct answer?
number 7 was C. Lot 1, Block A.
But why is it C? Because the question is asking which has the most frontage on Jasmine Lane.
On Jasmine Lane, correct.
And if you're going to combine Goodrich Boulevard and Jasmine, that would not be correct because the frontage of Goodrich is
You're only looking on Jasmine Lane. You're not looking on Goodrich. Only Jasmine Lane.
But from here you can see obviously it's 7 from the size.
7.
Yeah, but 7's not in the answer.
Yeah.
It's not an option.
Yeah, it's not an option.
Okay, so if you look at
So that question is not.
okay, look at what your question is. It 10? Is it 11? I mean, out of your ones that they're asking, is it 10, 11, 1 or 2?
Then the question should have read which of the lots has the most frontage and not which lot has the most frontage on Jasmine Lane. I think that question is not correct.
It's only 2 that's on there that's on Jasmine Lane, and 1 and 2 are the only ones that's on Jasmine Lane. And between the two, 1 is
Believe you
has
me,
the most
man, I don't understand what I'm talking about. What is said here is different. If you're asking me about which of these lots has the most frontage, it's different from which lot has the most frontage on Jasmine Lane.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but that's just not the question. The question's only between those 4 options.
No,
Your own interpretation.
I think he's right.
Okay, so let's look at the question, because you're going to see questions like this on your test, right?
He is right, but it's not an option. He is right. Number 7 is the largest one, but it's not an option on the question.
But that means that question is incorrect.
Okay, we don't get to pick questions. We only get to pick the answers, right?
I know, but if the question is incorrect, something is wrong.
Okay, so let's go through this. It's asking you, it's a multiple choice. Which lot has the most frontage on Jasmine Lane? And then it's asking you, is it lot 10 or 11, 1 or 2? So if you look at 10, there is no 10 on Jasmine Lane. So you know that's wrong. Then you look at lot 11 on Block B, right? And when you look at that, you look at the frontage and you can add that up. And then you head over to this is on Jasmine Lane, right? Block A. And you see that that is bigger than what you have on lot 11, Block B. Then let's go to lot 2. When you add them up, the correct answer is C.
Okay.
Right. You might not like how the question is asked, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to see questions that will be on your PSI exam, and they're not going to ask questions that are always going to be easy. You're going to have to think about it. Some questions are going to have 2 answers maybe. They're going to ask you what is the best answer. Okay? Even though 2, you're like, it could be this one or this one because of different reasons. Then you got to think, well, which one is the best answer? Or you have to look for words like most, that's highlighted. You got to think about what they're asking you. May not think it's being asked correctly, but it's their question. You got to just come up with the right answer.
Hey, Miss Janet,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Is there like an easy way to like, read these maps? I feel like I'm really confused. Like when I look at this. Like when you said lot 9, you said it was 120 by 90. Like where are you getting the 90 from?
Okay. Your question is there an easier way to read these?
Yeah, I'm just like I don't understand. Like,
Okay, you have to break them down, right? Do you want to go over that one more time?
yeah.
Okay.
So I feel like I don't want to keep going, you know.
All right, let's go over it one more time, because once you get it, you'll be able to do it on any of the ones that you're going to read. All right. I want you to look at the plat. Go to the right-hand side. It'll be under where it says plat of Mountainside Manor subdivision. And do you see that little arrow there, and it has an N north? Right, it's pointing towards the right, but that's your north, right? So in the opposite direction, you're going to have south. Then towards the top of the page, that will be your west. Towards the bottom of the page, that's going to be your east, right? That would be the first thing you would want to do. You want to define where your north is, where your south is, where your west is, and where your east is. Okay, do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's start again. Beginning at the intersection of the east line of Goodridge Boulevard. So Goodridge Boulevard is on the top. Do you see where that is? It has a west side and it has an east side, right? West line would be heading towards the top of the page. East would be heading towards that line towards the bottom of the page, right?
So going up, like going up.
You just need to know the east side. And then the south line of Jasmine Lane. So now you got to see the intersection there. You're on the east side, the corner there. You're really starting there. I don't have a book, but if you did, I would tell you to put a little dot there. So you're going, the intersection is telling you at Goodridge and Jasmine on the south side. It would be right there. Now it's telling you that you have to go a distance of 230 feet. So one lot is 120. One lot is 120 feet. The other one is 110 feet. When you add them up together, you're going 230 feet. Do you see that? So that takes you through lot 1 and lot 15, right? Are you following that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thence, now we're going to head east. We're going to go towards east, towards the bottom of the page. And you're going to the north line of Wolf Road, a distance of 195 feet. Okay? So you're going to drop down 195 feet. You see that? Then you're going to head, and do you see how it's not a straight line? It's not 90 degrees. It's a 22 degrees. Do you see lot 3? And it has N22 east there? On lot 3, do you see that?
Yeah.
Where the line drops down? Okay. So it's telling you, then northeasterly, so now we're heading north, but we're also on a slant going easterly, and it tells you north 22 east there. A distance of 135 feet. So you would stop there and put a little circle there, okay? Now we're going to go from there. And then it's northwesterly. So now we're going to start heading west again along the south line of Jasmine Lane. So we're still on the south, where we started on the south lane. And you're going to head on up towards the beginning where you first started at the intersection of Goodridge and Jasmine Lane. Do you understand how that's done?
Yeah, a little better.
Okay. You know what, Andrea? Call me and we'll go over this. I'll come up with some other examples for you.
You said these are on the test, correct?
You're probably going to see one.
Yeah, because it takes
class.
time to look through all these things.
I'm sorry, what, William?
I said it takes time to look through all of these, you know?
Yes, it does. But they allow you enough time to do this.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, you know, what I'm looking at.
Let me tell you, Andrea, when you do these a few times, you'll have this like light bulb that'll go off. And you go, oh, now I get it. Okay. I'll see if I can come up with some more examples for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's easier if you're looking at it in the book, though. Because you
I
can
was
like,
just about to say
Can I
that.
tell you
Like,
something?
Yeah, because I'm like looking at it like straight on my screen.
right,
yeah,
that's
and then
why.
it's backwards.
And I'm trying to like see where it's like north and then like.
You might be right about that. You
Yeah,
know
because
what
you
I'll
have
do?
the book. You have
Let
the
me
book and you
scan this
take your
for you.
time and go through it with the finger and so
I
forth.
will
But on the
scan this
screen-
for you tomorrow. All right, and email it to you along with the legal description. Because you really do need to know this. And I think you're right, William. If you see it on a piece of paper in front of you, it'll be easier to follow. Because as I'm reading it, I am putting a little dot on the plat map myself on the paper with my pen. Okay. Makes it easier for me to follow it. Once you get it, you get it. So let me do that for you tomorrow, and I'll see if I can find maybe 2 other ones for you to just practice with. Okay? All right. All right, so the next one is on the plat, that's that whole map. How many lots have easements? You can tell they're easements because the way they have them, they have those broken lines. So how many lots have easements on them?
D. 4.
4, that's right. The description meets the standard of being legally sufficient if A.
Can we go back to that question? Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Where's 4? I see 3.
15. Block B, number 15.
Down in the corner. Down east.
Okay.
All the way,
okay. All
all the
right,
way
got
to the
it.
bottom
Got
of
it.
the page.
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. A description meets the
Hey,
standard.
hey, Janet, can I stop you really quick? I'm sorry. We didn't cover easements in this section, did we? Or did I miss it? Like, did we go over like what they are in this section?
No, I think they mentioned it yesterday. We read it somewhere about
Okay,
easements.
okay. I was making sure I
However,
didn't miss it in this section.
you know what, James? We're going to be going over in other chapters,
Right.
different types of easements. okay?
Right.
Right now, we know that, and I think we read this yesterday, where there are utility easements.
Yeah, I see them in my notes. I was
Okay.
thinking about
However, there are different types of easements.
this
other
section
than-
because the quiz. I just want to make sure. I'm sorry.
Okay, there are other easements other than utility easements.
Okay.
And we will get into
Okay.
that. Okay.
Okay.
You'll know everything you need to know and don't want to know about easement.
Okay.
It will be here. Okay, a description meets the standard of being legally sufficient if A, a buyer can identify the property by the property address, B, title company certifies the description, C, competent surveyor can locate the parcel using the description, or D, real estate licensee can locate the parcel.
C.
C.
What is it?
C.
C. It is C. The legal description in the documents for each transfer of property must A, be copied from a mortgage document, B, be identical to the one used in prior transfers. C, give a description in lots and blocks. And D, be certified by a title officer.
B.
B.
It is B. So when you see a deed, okay, that legal description will always be the same unless legally the lot is subdivided and a new legal description, is done by a survey. But it'll just pass from one to the next to the next. It should remain the same. It should never change. Okay. All of the following are basic components of a meets and bounds description except, notice the word except. So tangible and intangible monuments, baselines, principal meridians and townships, degrees, minutes, and seconds, a point of beginning. B?
B, right? Yeah.
It is B. So when I was reading the legal description and we were going over it, you always have to have a point of beginning, always. They start at monument, right? A designated monument. Then you'll see degrees. Like, did you notice like on one of them, it was like north 22 degrees when it was slanting down, right? All right, the point or surface from which elevations are measured is called a datum, monument, benchmark, or meridian.
Okay.
Datum, yeah.
Datum. Okay. A grass marker that surveyors use to mark local datums is called a monument, meridian, keystone, or benchmark.
Benchmark.
What system uses a property's physical features to determine boundaries and measurements? Rectangular survey system?
Yeah.
Lot and block recorded plus system, meets and bounds, or multiple listing service? Now, if you see this on an exam, the multiple listing service has nothing at all to do with this, so you would automatically take that out. And you also know we're not using rectangular. So when you're looking at this, you can start doing process of elimination if you're not quite sure. In this case, we are sure, so the answer is what?
C.
C.
C. That's right.
What's the answer?
C, meets and bounds. Legal description that we just went through, that's all meets and bounds. Okay, which of the following is the best way, and best is capitalized, right? Which of the following is the best way to ensure that there are no encroachments and to verify the boundaries of a parcel of land?
B.
Spot survey.
Spot survey, and why is that?
Because it can identify.
Okay, a spot survey, what is different between a survey and a spot survey?
The spot survey will have like the shape of
A spot survey is something that you have to see with your eye.
like the building on it, right? Like inside the.
It'll have a
Because it's a little
building.
bit more detailed.
Yes, it'll have the building drawn, sketched onto the survey. Now, to have an encroachment, right, you wouldn't know that. You have to have a house or some kind of a physical structure to encroach on somebody else's property, right, to cross over their lot, right? So you would need a spot survey to tell you that. What does Pennsylvania require for condominium description? A, must always use north as the basis for direction. B, may be used in areas not covered by the rectangular survey system. C, must cover an area larger than 2 acres. Or D, plat must show the elevations of floors and ceiling on a vertical plane.
B.
The condominium. Okay, 18. Be valid.
What was the answer to that one? I'm sorry, you said B or D.
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 D is in David.
All right, thank you.
because it's a condominium.
Right.
It's got to show the elevation of the floors, right? You're doing an elevation survey because it's a condominium going up into airspace.
Yes, I was confused because it sounded like we said B, but I got it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. 18, to be valid in a legal description, the survey must allow the surveyor the ability to locate the A, street address, B, contours of the land, C, boundaries of the parcel, or D, benchmarks associated with the description.
See?
Right. That's what we've been doing. Okay, we have two more. The owner has a large parcel of land surveyed into lots and streets and files a subdivision plat. Each lot can be legally described by use of which of the following: A, street address, B, meets and bounds, C, government survey, or D, lot and block.
D. D.
D, lot and block, because it's a subdivision. Okay, 20. What is the
Right, it's a
detailed way?
subdivision.
What is the detailed way of describing a parcel of land for documents that will be accepted in a court of law? A, legal description, B, survey, C, defined boundaries, or D, street address?
A. A.
Yes, A. Okay, so we're going to take a break. It is 7:40, so come back 5 of 8. Okay.
All right.
All right. I'll see you in a little bit.
Janet, did you say 8?
5 of 8, 8 o'clock is even fine too.
Okay, thanks.
Might as well take a break because the next chapter really is going to be a long chapter.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, just want to make sure.
All right. Yeah, I have it.
Okay, good. Okay, so everybody should be back by now. There's two people that I don't see here. I could be overlooking you, so I don't want to make sure that I'm not. Annabelle Crowe, are you here? Alliance Hamlin? Okay.
Yes, Aviance Hamlin is here.
Oh, you're that 208 number. Okay.
208. Why the heck? Hold
Oh,
on.
no. You come up as 208-696-8818. I'll make a note to myself, though, so I know next time.
Maybe it came up because I put that in as me thinking I thought it was the name. No, me thinking that it asked me to put my ID number in, but after I realized it, I already hit join and I didn't want to relog out.
Okay. You don't have to relog out. You can go to where your profile is there. You see more. And if you hit more, you can rename yourself.
All right, cool. I did it. I'm doing it now.
That's okay. I have you marked present. All right. So we're just missing one person. Okay. Okay. So now we're going into Unit 5. The learning objectives are going to be identify the kinds of limitations on ownership rights that are imposed by governmental powers, describe the various estates and land and the rights and limitations they convey, explain concepts related to encumbrances and their impact on the use and value of property, and discuss the rights and limitations of property owners who have access to water. Overview: ownership is not absolute, depends on the type of interest held. Even complete ownership is limited by public and private restriction, may not interfere with others' use or enjoyment, may not interfere with the welfare of the public. Governmental powers, and we're going to start with this. This is an acronym for police power, eminent domain, taxation, and a sheet. So we're going to start on page, wow, okay, we're on page 70 already. Okay, does somebody want to start reading?
Excuse me, Janet, this is not helping me learn the whole round robin thing. It's actually like distracting me more.
Okay, so you want me to continue reading?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, fully noted.
I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know how to read like that, man. I'm just starting.
Okay, so go to page 70. And I'm going to start under the section of overview where it says licensees, second paragraph, should have a working knowledge of the restrictions that might limit current or future owners. For example, a zoning ordinance will not allow a doctor's office to coexist with a residence, a condo association bylaw prohibiting resale without board approval, or an easement allowing the neighbors to use the private beach may not only burden today's purchaser, but also deter a future buyer. Governmental powers. Individual ownership rights are subject to certain powers or rights held by federal, state, and local governments. These limitations on real estate ownership are imposed for the general welfare of the community and therefore supersede the rights or interests of the individual. Government powers include police power, eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. So we're going to talk about police power. Every state has the power to enact legislation to preserve order, protect the public health and safety, and promote the general welfare of its citizens. The authority is the state's police power. The state's authority is passed on to municipalities and counties through legislation called enabling acts. What is defined as in the public interest varies widely from state to state and region to region. For example, police power is used to enact governmental protection laws, zoning ordinances, and building codes. Regulations that govern the use, occupancy, size, location, construction, and rents of real estate also fall into the police powers. Police powers may be used to achieve a community's needs or goals. A city that deems growth to be desirable, for instance, may exercise police power to encourage the purchase and improvement of land. On the other hand, an area that wishes to retain its character may enact laws that discourage development and population growth. Like the rights of ownership, the state's power to regulate land use is not absolute. The laws must be uniform and non-discriminatory. That is, they may not operate to the advantage or disadvantage of any one particular owner or owners. Eminent domain. Now, we did talk about eminent domain a little bit yesterday, but I'm still going to read this because you really do need to know what eminent domain is. Eminent domain is the right of the government to acquire privately owned real estate for public use. Condemnation is the process by which the government exercises this right by either judicial or administrative proceedings. I would highlight that. That was also in your previous chapter. It is important to know what the differences are between eminent domain and condemnation. So eminent domain is the right, condemnation is the process. When property is taken in this manner, just compensation is to be paid. The owner and the rights of the property owner are to be protected by due process of law. Ideally, the public agency and the owner of the property in question agree on the compensation through direct negotiation, and the government purchases the property for a price considered fair by the owner. In some cases, the owner may simply dedicate the property to the government as a site for a school, a park, or another beneficial use. In cases where the owner's consent cannot be obtained, however, the government agency can initiate condemnation proceedings to acquire the property. Generally, states delegate their power of eminent domain to cities and counties or public entities for public services. For instance, a public housing authority might take privately owned land to build low-income housing, or the state's redevelopment authority could use the power of eminent domain to make way for urban renewal. If there were no further feasible way to do so, a railway utility company or state highway department might acquire farmland to extend railroad tracks, bring electricity to a remote new development, or build a highway. Taxation. Taxation is a charge on real estate to raise funds to meet the needs of a government. Taxes on real estate include annual real estate taxes assessed by local and area governmental entities, including school districts, taxes on income realized by individuals and corporations on the sale of property, and special fees that may be levied for special projects. Non-payment of taxes may give government the power to claim an interest in the property. And so we'll be talking more about that in Unit 7. Escheat. Escheat is a process by which the state may acquire privately owned real or personal property. State laws provide for ownership to transfer or escheat to the state when an owner dies, leaving no heirs as defined by the law, and no will to direct how the property is to be distributed. Escheat is intended to prevent property from being ownerless. In some states, real property escheats to the county where the land is located. But in Pennsylvania, both real and personal unclaimed property must be turned over to the state. All right, does everybody understand what escheat is? Somebody dies, there's no heirs, there's no will. So something has to happen to the property. That is known as escheat.
Is that different from a probate or?
Yes. Probating, get into probating property when somebody passes. They either have a will or they don't have a will, but probate an estate, there's somebody there. There would be like a family member, a parent, a child, a sibling. So they're going to raise the estate, which is known as probating the estate. And when you have real estate in the estate, if you have a will, it might be left to one of the children, could be left to whomever the person wants to leave it to. If there is nobody, then, okay, so if the person doesn't have children, they may look like a sibling. I mean, there's a certain tier of where somebody, when they die, what's called intestate, they don't have a will, you know, it would follow. So let's say somebody passes away and they have 3 children. Well, then it would be divided in thirds. Okay. You understand what the difference is? They don't have any heirs. They don't have anybody, and they haven't left a will. I mean, some people might not have heirs, but maybe they would leave their property to a friend or a foundation.
So with the cheat, the banks just come and they foreclose on the home because there's nobody to.
Well, it would be the estate. The state would take over the property.
Okay.
Does the state have to wait a certain amount of time before they can do that? Like after, because I know like in banking, when you have escheated accounts, you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can actually take that money from them.
Yeah, I don't know what the time period would be. If somebody passes away, usually they advertise, like, you know, so people, I'm sure they do some investigation before they actually take a property, you know, before the state takes the property. They would have to, but what time period, I don't know. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, estates and land. An estate and land defines the degree, the quantity, the nature, and extent of an owner's interest in real property. Many types of estates exist. However, not all interest in real estate are estates. To be an estate and land, an interest must allow possession, meaning the holding and enjoyment of the property either now or in the future, and must be measured according to time. Historically, estates and land have been classified primarily by their length of time of possession. Freehold estates are ownership interests that last for an indeterminable length of time, such as for a lifetime or forever. A freehold estate continues for an indefinite period and may be passed along to the owner's heirs. A life estate is based on the lifetime of a person and terminates when that individual dies. Freehold estates may be created by deed, by will, or by operation of law. The various estates in real estate are illustrated in Figure 5.1.
Janet, can you give an example of what an estate would be?
Okay, so when somebody passes away, they will leave an estate, either by will or by operation of law. And what would be included in the estate would be any real property or any personal property. Now, if somebody dies and they have a will, they will, in that will, have an executor or an executrix that will have to identify all the property that is in the estate and the value of it. And then they're obligated to go by the terms of the will. Now, if somebody has, let's say, a property and there's a will, they can will it to a person, or they can say they want the property sold and it divided equally. It's whatever the terms are in the will. if somebody passes away and they don't have a will and they're intestate, then the family has to decide who's going to administer to the will. And you would have to go and, okay, the person that will be administering that estate is going to be either an administrator or an administratrix, depending on their gender. And then they have to go to wills and estates and fill out forms, which is called the beginning of probating estate. And then they would have to go through the home, go through the property, and do the same thing, identify everything that the person owned, personal property, and their real estate. Okay, so an estate really is the ownership of whatever assets that person had in their lifetime. Do you have any questions about that?
No, I have a question about the freehold
Okay,
estates.
thank you.
Okay.
So the
Well-
freehold estates, is that the same, like say you have a property and you give it to someone while you're alive? I mean, you continue to live there and then you die and the person you give it to, they can keep the property. Is that the same?
I don't think I understand your question. I'm sorry.
Like say you give your property to someone while you're living, okay? And you die, they can keep the property? Is that the same as a freehold estate?
It would be considered a freehold estate. What they're trying to do here is, okay, so look at the diagram that's in your book. And we're going to be talking about this. So, okay, so do you see over here, you have freehold. Freehold is indeterminable, it's forever. And usually, you know, there's ownership interest. Somebody has, you know, a property, they have a deed and a will, or maybe they don't, but it's going to be, have children. So by operational law, it'll be, you know, it'll go down to the children. Leasehold, okay? Leasehold is very different, and there's different types of leasehold estates. So suppose that, okay, I'm married, I have a husband, right? But I have children by a previous marriage. I really ultimately want my children to benefit from my estate. So, but I don't want my husband kicked out of the house either. So what I might consider doing is giving him the right to live there for the remainder of his life, right? I'll give him a lifetime estate. But once he passes, the house will then, even though he has children, he doesn't have ownership interest, so his children would never have interest to that estate or that property. It would, according to my will, then go to my children. Okay? And that's what they're trying to differentiate here. There's life estates, and then there's the one with the ownership interest, which would be your freehold estates. And we're going to read about this, and I think after we read about it, maybe it'll make more sense. But I'm going to leave this one slide up here because you can kind of follow along with it as I'm reading. Okay? All right. So non-freehold estates are those for which the length of time can be determined. These are called leasehold estates. Fee simple estates. Now, fee simple estates, when you're doing your agreement of sale, basically they're going to be fee simple unless you say otherwise. And that is the highest degree of ownership that you can have when you're transferring your deed over. Okay? If you were to do something, but you probably wouldn't even be involved with it. When you get into different types of ownership, it'll be by a will. If it's something that's more complicated, there will be an attorney involved who's going to be doing this. It won't be you. okay? But you should at least know about it. So an estate in fee simple, also called fee simple absolute, is the highest interest in real estate recognized by law. Fee simple estate is ownership in which the owner is entitled to all the rights to the property by law. This estate is intended to run forever. Upon the death of its owner, it passes to the owner's heirs. It is limited only by public and private restrictions such as zoning laws and restrictive covenants. Defeasible fee estate or fee simple defeasible estate is a qualified estate that is subject to the occurrence or non-occurrence of a specified event. Two categories of defeasible estates exist: fee simple determinable and fee simple subject to a condition subsequent. Okay, so you see on the left-hand side of if you're in your book, you're going to see a graph there. And you're going to see under freehold estates, you're going to see your fee simple estates, right? And then underneath that, you'll see fee simple absolute and fee simple defeasible. So fee simple determinable, right, is a fee simple defeasible estate that may be inherited. This estate is qualified by a special limitation, which is an occurrence or event. The language used to distinguish a special.
Where is this graph at?
Pardon me?
Where's the graph at?
In your book on page 72.
It's above the paragraph she's reading.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, a fee simple determinable is a fee simple defeasible estate that may be inherited. This estate is qualified by a special limitation. The language used to distinguish a special limitation, words such as so long as, or while, or during, is the key to creating the special limitation. The former owner retains a possibility of reverter. I would highlight that reverter because you need to know what that means, where it could, under certain conditions, revert back to the original owner. So the limitation is violated. The former owner or heirs or successors can reacquire full ownership with no need to go to court. The deed is automatically returned to the former owner. A fee simple estate subject to a condition subsequent, the second type of fee simple defeasible estate, is similar to a fee simple determinable in that an owner gives real estate on condition of ownership, but it differs in the way the estate will terminate if there is a violation to the condition. While in fee simple subject to a condition subsequent, the estate does not automatically terminate upon violation of the condition of ownership. The owner has the right to re-entry, but must go through the court to assert this right. The right of entry and possibility for reverter may never take effect. If they do, it will only be sometime in the future. Therefore, each of the rights is called a future interest. And this is their example. Land given on the condition that there are no consumption of alcohol on the premises is a fee simple subject to a conditional subsequent. If the alcohol is consumed on the property, the former owner has the right to reacquire full ownership. It will be necessary for the former owner or their heirs or successors to go to court to assert that right. Okay, do you understand what that difference is?
Kind of.
Yeah, not really, to be honest. Do you have like
Yeah.
a different example or something, the way to explain it?
Okay, let's say, all right, let's go through the first one. I am going to tell my son, I'm going to turn my house over to him. But as long as he, okay, let's say that he has a son, my grandson will say, okay, I have a son. And I'll say something to him like, so long as you are taking care of your son, you have ownership in the property. But the moment that you decide not to, I have, a right of reversion where the property will come back to me. That would be an example of a fee simple determinable. I'm telling him so long as or while he is taking care of his son or during the time that he's raising his son. And that way my grandson will have a place to live, okay? Now, after that time period ends, if I choose to, I can just move right back into the house and I don't have to go to court to do that. It's been predetermined that sometime in the future this would happen. All right, so the other example then would be, okay, if you're doing, and it's very similar, okay, condition subsequent. I don't have the right of reversion in there. So now my grandson moves out of the house, but I don't have the right of reversion, and now I want to move in, and he's telling me that I can't. Well, this was agreed to legally, I should be able to, but he's not allowing me to. I can go to the courts and say to the courts, these were the terms, but even though I don't have a right of reversion, revert back to me, the property, that by law, because of our agreement, the court should order this on my behalf and in my favor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that. I can understand that.
Okay. So I'm just going to tell you, read it. If you read this, really take a look at it as you're reading it. You're going to look at, honestly, you're not even going to be dealing with this, but you should know about it. Okay. So at some point in the future, and I mean, I've never seen this because this is more like the legal end of it, where if this was happening, these people would have attorneys, and if it had to go to court, you would never be involved with any of this. In your own personal life, let's say that you are a single person and you have a house and you have children, but you get married and you're married for a long time, and ultimately you want to make sure your children are taken care of, but you don't want to kick your spouse out just because you're not there. So you might want to consider doing something like this. Or it could be, the house of my daughter and say, as long as you take care of my husband, okay, so long as you do that, this is going to be your house, right? I'm not here, so I don't care about a right of reversion personally, but if she wants that house and that's how it was written up, then legally she can keep the house as long as she's taking care of them. That would be something else. Now, a life estate. A life estate is a freehold estate that is limited in duration to the life of the owner or to the life of some other designated person or persons. Like other freehold estates, a life estate is not inheritable. It passes to future owners according to the provision of the life estate. Conventional life estates. A conventional life estate is created by the intentional act of the owner. It may be established either by a deed at the time of the ownership, it's transferred during the owner's life, or by a provision of the owner's will after death. The estate is conveyed to an individual known as the life tenant. The life tenant has full enjoyment of the ownership until the death of the person against whose life the estate is measured. At this point, the life's tenant's rights cease, and the ownership passes as a fee simple estate to another designated individual or returns to the previous owner or heirs. Until the life's tenant's rights cease, the right to the fee simple estate is known as inchoate, meaning that the right is incomplete or the right exists but is not fully exercised until sometime in the future. Life tenant is not a renter like a tenant associated with a lease. A life tenant is entitled to the rights of ownership and can benefit from both possession and ordinary use and profits arising from ownership, just as though the individual were a fee simple owner. Life's tenant's ownership may be sold, mortgaged, or leased, but it is always subject to the limitation of the life estate. Okay, so let's say I'm married and I'm getting divorced. My husband has a property. He may give me a life estate until I pass away, but if I pass away, because I'm only a tenant really in that property, then he can determine after, my life is over, what he wants to do. He could do whatever he wants with the property. It's for a determinable amount of time. And it's measured against, it doesn't have to be my life. It could be, maybe I have small children and, I have a life estate set up in the tenant there, but once my children leave the house and, I pass away, they get a little bit complicated, but I normally would see this usually if a spouse is involved and the person already has the house in their name and they want to leave it to the children. That would be, an easy fix. That keeps everybody, I guess, happy to a certain extent.
In that instance, who pays the taxes on the property?
The person that has the life estate would have to keep the property up.
That's what I figured. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, while they're living there, they're acting owners of the property. So they hold all the full responsibilities.
Would have the responsibility, because otherwise, if they were not paying the mortgage or they were not paying the taxes, then the house would go into foreclosure, and there goes the property. So they would have to upkeep it.
So I guess the biggest difference is that you just it's yours. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is going to happen, like, say, by a will. Let's say I say to my husband, look, I'm going to make arrangements for you to have a life estate under these conditions.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to make sure that you're paying the mortgage. You would have to pay the taxes and et cetera, et cetera. You cannot leave the property go into foreclosure. In the event that you are to do that, then your life estate will end and it will automatically go to my children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we don't get involved in this. We're not attorneys, right? We really don't. You need to know about it because it's, part of the course. But in actuality, nobody is going to be asking you to do anything like this. This is way above, our capacity as a realtor. Okay. By the way, do you know what the difference is between a realtor and a salesperson?
No.
Well, you will eventually, because we are going to be covering it. But just so you know, a realtor is basically as the same requirements that a salesperson does, except they belong to a board. Okay, if you're out there, you're hired by a brokerage and you're selling real estate, you're working with buyers, you're working with sellers. If you don't belong to a board, you cannot call yourself a realtor. You would be considered a salesperson. Okay. That's the difference. And there are benefits to belonging to a board, and we'll talk about that when we eventually get there. Okay, pour atrevet. A life estate may also be based on the lifetime of a person other than the life tenant. Although a life estate is not considered an estate of inheritance, a life estate pour atrevet, the life of another, provides for inheritance by the life tenant's heirs only until the death of the third party. A life estate pour atrevet is often created for people who are physically or mentally incapacitated in the hope of providing incentive for someone to care for them. So that would be, let's say, life estate pour atrevet. Let's say that I have a child who has a handicap, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of. So as an incentive, I could give my brother a life estate into my house. Let's say he's living in an apartment. It would be a life estate pour atrevet as long as he's taking care of my disabled son. Okay? All right. Remainder and reversion. We're on page 74. The fee simple owner who creates a life estate must plan for its future ownership. When the life estate ends, it is replaced by a fee simple estate. The future owner of the fee estate may be designated in one of two ways. Reversionary interest, which is the creator of the life estate may choose not to name a remanderman. In that case, ownership is said to revert to the original owner upon the end of the life estate. Remainder interest. The creator of the life estate may name a remanderman as the person to whom the property will pass when the life estate ends. And if you look at 5.2, let me see, there should be something here too. You know what I think I'm going to do? I don't know how big these files are. I'm going to share with you some of these PowerPoints because there are videos in here, video links that I think are really important. If they're too big and I can't do this, I'm going to go through these and pick out some of these links and email them to you. Okay? I'll do that over the weekend. Did anybody, that link that I shared with you yesterday, did anybody actually even watch that?
Oh, I didn't even get it.
I didn't get the link either. I was actually going to ask you about that at the end of the class.
Okay. I think we had the link in the chat room where we put it.
Oh, I thought
The
somebody
link that
said they
didn't take
couldn't
you to
get-
the video. It just takes you to the website, I believe.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it just took me to the website. That's what I mentioned yesterday, and I think you said you were gonna try to send the link again.
Okay.
today.
I'm going to see if I can send you the PowerPoint presentation. The PowerPoint presentation is going to be everything that we're going over here. But you know what? There's a lot of videos in these. I don't know why they're not working. They're working on my end, but you can't hear it. But I'm not sure why. I'll try it one more time if we come across another video. Otherwise, I'll have to go through and copy all the links and send them over to you because they're entertaining and they also are very informative. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try this video. So bear with me. If you can't hear it, let me know. But I think on my computer, maybe if I turn off my audio, maybe you can hear it.
Can't hear it.
Janet, in one of the settings, if you're trying to share or watch a PowerPoint presentation or a YouTube video, there is a setting in Zoom that allows you to broadcast the video and audio through Zoom. It's nested in the settings, but it's there. And we're not hearing the person talking.
I don't think she could hear us because of the video.
I think you're right about that. Maybe we should send her a chat or an instant message just to let her know.
Oh, she really think this drill playing. Yo, somebody wave at her or something, man. Get her attention. Yo. Help.
James, wait. And grounds. You can't. Somebody told me that if muted,
What
my
did?
computer would be able to. Yeah, I'm going to stop this then. Thank you. Okay.
That didn't work out.
No, I just called her. She said she's stopping the video now.
Thanks, bro.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right. James, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. All right. Well, that didn't work. So clearly, I'm not going to be able to show you any of these videos. But I'll go through and whatever video links there are, I'll make sure you get them all. Okay. All right. So getting back to the conventional life estates on page 74, does everybody understand the difference between the reversionary interest and the remainder interest?
Yes.
Okay. Legal life estate. A legal life estate is not created voluntarily by an owner. Rather, it is a form of life estate established by state law. It becomes effective automatically when certain events occur. Dower, courtesy, and homestead are legal life estates currently used in some states. Dower and courtesy provide the non-owning spouse with the means of support after the death of the owning spouse. Dower is the life estate that a wife has in the real estate of her deceased husband. Courtesy is an identical interest that a husband has in the real estate of his deceased wife. In general, the common law concepts of dower and courtesy have been abolished in favor of the Uniform Probate Code. The UPC gives the surviving spouse a right an elective share on the death of the other spouse. The Pennsylvania Probate Estates and Fiduciaries Code, which has been adopted consistent with the UPC, creates a legal life estate for the surviving spouse of a deceased owner. The surviving spouse is permitted 1/3 of the value of the deceased spouse's estate at the time of death. According to the law, the surviving spouse has the option of taking the specified percentage of the estate in lieu of the amount that is directed by the deceased will. If the spouse dies intestate, and intestate means without a will, and that is a term that you absolutely need to know. Then the statute directs the percentage distribution of assets to the surviving spouse and other specified heirs. Because a legal life estate provides a future interest in ownership, the possibility exists that a non-owning spouse might attempt to claim an interest even where there may not be one. Consequently, the non-owning spouse, along with the owning spouse, has been required to sign real estate documents to release any potential common law interest in the property being transferred. Although the signature of a non-owning spouse is no longer a legal requirement, some lending institutions or title companies may still hold to the long-standing practice of requiring both signatures in real estate documents. Okay, encumbrances. Encumbrances is a claim, a charge, a liability that attaches to real estate. An encumbrance may decrease the value or obstruct the use of the property. In essence, an encumbrance is a right or an interest held by someone other than the property owner that affects title to the real estate, but does not necessarily prevent a transfer of title. Encumbrances may be divided in two general classifications: liens, usually monetary charges, or encumbrances, restrictions, easements, and encroachments that affect the physical condition of the property. Now, if you're selling a property and the title company is going to do a search. They're going to do a lien search. And so when they're doing the lien search, there can be different types. Okay, there could be different types of liens. You can have a tax lien, you could have a mechanics lien, you can have a utility lien. When they come up, that comes out of the seller's proceeds. So when the buyer is buying the property, they're getting a free and clear title. An encroachment is something very different. An encroachment would come up on the title. When you have title search done, if there's any covenants or restrictions or easements, you're going to see that on the title. If you do see something like that, you're going to see an easement or a restriction that will pass along with the title of the property. So liens, or I should say it could. Lien is a charge against the property that provides security for a debt or obligation of the property owner. If the obligation is not repaid, the lien holder is entitled to have the debt satisfied from the proceeds of a court-ordered or forced sale of the debtor's property. Real estate taxes, mortgages, and trust deeds, judgments, and mechanics liens all represent possible liens against an owner's real estate. Now, tax liens take precedence. Even if, let's say there's a mechanics lien on the property from 2005, and now let's say there's a tax lien from 2018. Because it's a tax lien that takes precedence over a lien prior to that or a different type of lien. Deed restrictions. Deed restrictions are private restrictions that affect the use of the land. Once placed in the deed by a previous owner, they run with the land, limiting the use of the property and binding to all grantees. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions are private agreements that affect land use. They It may be enforced by an owner of real estate and included in the seller's deed to the buyer. Typically, however, restrictive covenants are imposed by a developer or a subdivider to maintain specific standards in the subdivision. Such restrictive covenants are listed in the original development plan for the subdivision filed in the public record. But you could also have a different type of deed restriction in the case where there could be a restriction on, let me just think of something. Okay, I was talking about the grant program. Could be restrictions that may last for a period of time, and then after that period of time, they just, you know, they're no longer enforceable. Easements. An easement is the right to use the land of another party for a particular purpose. It may exist in any portion of the real estate, including the airspace above or right away across the land. And a pertinent easement is attached to the ownership of one parcel of land and allows the owner the use of the neighbor's land. For an appurtenant easement to exist, two adjacent parcels of land must be owned by two different parties. The parcel over which the easement runs is known as the servient tenement, and the neighboring parcel that benefits is known as the dominant tenement. I'm looking to see if they have a little map here. I think they will. Here we go.
Because easements are for like the public, right? They're like right of ways for people to actually walk.
Not necessarily. It could be, let's say, utility. Well, okay, it's different if you're saying the public in that, like a neighborhood, and there's an easement on the property for people to go through your property so they can go through the hiking trail. But there's also easements that could be like a utility easement, right? That would be different. The utility company has the right to utilize that easement, but that doesn't mean that it's a public easement and everybody has the right to be there.
But say it's the only way for me to actually get to my destination. I have to walk through that easement in order to get to my destination.
Right, that's what we're talking about now.
Okay.
Okay. So I want to go over this one section again because you do need to know that the parcel over which the easement runs is known as the servient tenement. The neighboring parcel that benefits is known as the dominant tenement. Okay, so this example here for 5.4,
5.3.
there are two of them in the book, 5.3 and 5.4. And this will, if you look at them while I'm reading this to you, it will make sense, okay? So go to page 76. All right, so you're going to see a diagram here. You have lot A and then you have lot B. So the owner of lot B has a pertinent easement across lot A to gain access to the property from the public road, right? Lot B would be the dominant. Lot A is the servient because it's serving your use. So I think that's what you were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you live in a house there, but because you have all those trees, you have an easement over your neighbor's property by way of a road so that you can access your property, right? You would be dominant, and then lot A would be the servient. So an appurtenant easement is part of the dominant tenement. If the dominant tenement is conveyed to another party, the easement transfers with the title. This type of easement is said to run with the land. It is an encumbrance on the property and will transfer with the deed of the dominant tenant forever, unless the holder of the dominant tenement legally releases that right. Now, let's say all those trees that are there, you decide you don't want the trees there anymore, and you get rid of them, okay? Now you want to put your own little roadway in, and let's say you go to the owner of Lot A and say, I have an easement on your property. I don't need it anymore, right? You could legally release it right away, and you no longer have use of his land, okay? A party wall can be an exterior wall of a building that straddles the boundary line between two lots, or it can be a commonly shared partition wall between two connected properties. The lot owners own the half of the wall on their individual lot, and each has an appurtenant easement in the other half of the wall. A written party wall agreement must be used to create the easement rights. Expenses to build and maintain the wall are usually shared. A fence built on the lot line is treated the same as a wall. A party driveway shared by and partly on the land of adjoining owners must also be created by written agreements specifying responsibility for expenses. Now, I'm going to tell you, in Philadelphia, you will see this. You will see where you have one driveway. It might be in the back that each house has their own garage, but you might just have one driveway, and then they kind of like dogleg off into their own garages, right? So you both have an easement. You own half of it, your neighbor owns half of it. But if you look at the deed, you're going to have your neighbor will have an easement onto your section of the driveway. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to drive his car down it. Now, the problem is that some people might be really great keeping up with your driveway, where the other person, if you approach them and say, listen, there's all these ruts and the driveway's a mess, I'd like to get a new driveway in there. You're going to have to ask them to contribute. So then what happens if they say, geez, I've been laid off of work, I don't have a job, and I don't know when I'll be working again, I don't have that kind of money. What do you do? Do you just pave your side? I guess you could do that. Or do you take the responsibility of paving the whole thing, or you just don't do anything? If you take your neighbor to court, number one, you're probably going to be on bad terms. But if you know already that he doesn't have anything, probably the court isn't even going to find in your favor, or they may. I don't know. That would be a legal issue that would have to be determined by the courts. All right, an easement in gross is an individual or company interest in right to use someone else's land. The easement benefits a person or an entity rather than the land. As is the case with an appurtenant easement, the railroad's right-of-way is an easement in gross, as are the right-of-ways of utility easements, such as for a pipeline or high-tension power line. Commercial easements in gross may be assigned, conveyed, and inherited. Personal easements in gross are usually not assignable. Generally, a personal easement in gross terminates on the death of the easement owner. Okay, so in 5.4, this says 5.4 is up, but actually what you're looking at on the screen here is actually 5.3. Okay, in your book under 5.4, the utility company has an easement in gross across both parcels of land for its power lines. Creating an easement. Okay, creating an easement. An easement is created by a written agreement between the parties that establish the easement right. The creation of an easement involves two separate parties, one of whom is the owner of the land over which the easement runs. Two other ways for an easement to be created are easement by necessity and easement by prescription. Okay, an easement by necessity. An easement that is created when an owner sells a parcel of land that has no access to the street or public way except over the seller's remaining land is an easement by necessity. An easement by necessity is created by court order based on the principle that owners must have the right to enter and exit their land. The right of ingress, enter, and egress, exit. They cannot be landlocked. Remember, this form of easement is called an easement by necessity. It is not merely for convenience. So you could have somebody that has subdivided the back end of their land, right? There's no roadway there. The guy has to have, or whoever is purchasing the property, they by law have to have access to their land. It's a landlocked lot. Now, in the city, I don't think I've ever really seen anything like that, but I have in the counties. So the only way that you can get to your place is to go over your neighbor's land. Now, they could voluntarily create an easement, but if they choose not to, then you could go to court and you could ask the court to give you an easement based on necessity, and they would give it to you. Okay, easement by prescription. The claimant has made use of another's land for a certain period of time defined by state law. An easement by prescription or a prescriptive easement may be acquired. The prescriptive period ranges from 10 to 21 years. The claimant's use must have been continuous, exclusive, and without the owner's permission. The use must be visible, open, and notorious, and the owner must have been able to learn of it. Prescriptive easements cannot usually be acquired on public land. The concept of taking or tacking provides that successive periods of continuous occupation by different parties may be combined to reach the required total number of years necessary to establish a claim for the prescriptive easement. To tack on one person's possession to that of another, the parties must have been successors in interest, such as an ancestor and the ancestor's heir, a landlord and a tenant, or a seller and a buyer. So it has to be, and there's an acronym, PANU. An easement by prescription has to be continuous, adverse, notorious and open, and exclusive. So let's say up in the mountains, there's land there, and let's say I have a house there, but my neighbor has a property, and let's say it's a shortcut to my house if I cut through his property. Okay, now I just keep using it, and I've been using it for whatever period of time, is allowed in the state. Let's say it's 10 years. For 10 years, I am using it. I'm actually throwing stones over there now. I'm having them dump because it's easier for me to go there. And all of a sudden, I feel like I have ownership over it, right? And let's say eventually, he discovers I'm doing this. Well, I could argue, well, I have had continuous use of that land. I've been taking this shortcut for the last 20 years even. And I've even laid, stones down, and no one's ever said anything to me. Then the court might find in my favor. Maybe. They have to, maybe not. But Good chance they would. An easement by prescription may be claimed by the person who has made use of another's land for at least 21 years. The claimant's use must be continuous, exclusive, without the owner's approval, as well as visible, open, and notorious. That is, the owner must have been able to learn of it. An easement by prescription is awarded if the claimant meets all of the requirements and provides sufficient proof in court. A property is located in a state with a prescriptive period of 20 years. For the past 22 years, a neighbor has driven across the property's front yard several times a day to reach the neighbor's garage from a more comfortable angle. Neighbor has an easement by prescription. For 25 years, another's neighbor has driven across the same front yard 2 or 3 times a year to reach the neighbor's property when in a hurry. This neighbor does not have an easement by prescription because the use was not continuous. For 15 years, the next door neighbor parked a car on the same property next to the garage for 6 years ago. This neighbor sold the house to a person who continued to park a car next to the garage. Last year, the new neighbor acquired an easement by prescription through packing. An easement by condemnation is created under the government's right of eminent domain. This easement is acquired for public purpose. As with any other condemnation proceeding, the owner of the affected property must be properly compensated for the easement. Terminating an easement. Easements may be ended when the need no longer exists, when the owner of either the dominant or the servient tenement becomes the owner of both, and the properties are merged under one legal description, also known as termination by merger. By release of the right of easement to the owner of the servient tenement, by abandonment of the easement, the intention of the parties is the determining factor. By non-use of a prescriptive easement, by adverse possession of the owner of the servient tenement, by destruction of the servient tenement, for instance, the demolition of a party wall, by lawsuit and action to quiet title against someone claiming an easement, or by excessive use, as when a residential use is converted to commercial purposes. Note that an easement may not automatically terminate for these reasons. Certain legal steps may be required. In practice, easements are common encumbrances, especially for public utilities. A landowner cannot interfere with the rights of an easement holder. However, easements can hinder the owner's use of the property. For example, a landowner can be prevented from building a structure where it would block access to a sewer easement. Landowners should be familiar with any easements, preferably before rather than after they purchase a property or make plans for using it. Now, when your client is buying a property, okay, maybe the easement is on the deed, but it was never disclosed. I ask for the deeds ahead of time. My office, for whatever reason, they'll send me everything, but they never seem to send me those deeds, and I'm always asking for them. And I just kind of read through them to make sure that they look okay. If I saw something on the deed for the first time and it says something about an easement, I would call up the other realtor and say, is there an easement on that property? Because it wasn't disclosed, right? It could be disclosed. But if it wasn't disclosed, then I would have to call up my client and say, listen, I just got a copy of the deed, and there's an easement on the property that they didn't disclose to us. And then an easement where people have access to walk on the left side of your house so they can have access to the hiking trail. Are you okay with that? Hopefully they're going to say yes, okay? I think most people would. But if they say no, then I'd have to go back to the seller and say, listen, we have a problem. You never disclosed it, and my client is not okay with this. So what options does my client have? I might be able to ask the other party, listen, well, I could actually terminate the contract, probably. But I might say, listen, this is going to be convenient for him because he was planning on, in that space there, putting up trees for privacy. He's not going to be able to do that now. My client would like to go ahead with the sale, but he wants like the value of the property to be reduced by $10,000 or $5,000. You might want to check with the seller and see if they want to move forward. If not, we're terminating the contract, right? I would probably do something like that.
Ms. Jen, I got a question.
Yes.
For the easement by prescription, right? For instance, if there's a squatter that's been in an abandoned building for quite some time, what is this? What, 20-something years? 21 years?
It's 21 years.
So for him to be there for 21 years, what kind of paperwork do you bring to say that I have ownership of this abandoned building?
Well, I would say they probably don't automatically have ownership right. They would have to prove that they were living there for 21 years and see if they could go to court to get a quiet title so that the property would be awarded to them.
So what would that take? Like paying a bill or something like that?
You would need mail, right?
Or mail, something like that?
Yeah, you would have to go all the way back and prove that you have
Yeah.
consistently, lived in that house. And
Like a water bill or something, maybe.
well, utility bills, something.
Even with a quiet title, you would still have to represent 21 years of living there.
If you're going to court and you're a squatter, then they're going to want proof that you were living there for that period of time. Okay, let me just put it to you this way. Let's say, and believe me, this has happened to me. I've gone to show a house and now there's squatters living in the house, right? And maybe the owner lives out of state. He doesn't even know it, right? But at some point, he's going to become aware of it. Now, the person that's living in the property, their intent is squatters' right, and they want eventually to own that property. I would think they're going to be paying taxes even on the property. Otherwise, it's going to go in a tax sale, or not necessarily, because the owner could still be paying taxes on that property. But if he starts paying utilities and all that, but in that situation, I call up the realtor and say, hey, listen, you got a squatter in your house. Now, the owner knows. If he decides not to do anything about it, then, the owner just lets him live there. Then I guess after 21 years, he could legally claim ownership of the property. But I don't see that happening. I think the owner would eventually, go through the process of getting them evicted. You can't just throw them out.
What if the owner died? What if the owner died? So there's no owners. The owner's been dead for almost the same amount of time that he's been squatting in the house. Then
So
what?
the owner died like 21 years ago, and then the squatter has been paying the taxes and everything.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? He can say, listen, the owner died, there were no heirs, and I've been paying taxes on this house. Here's all my receipts. I've been doing it for 21 years. Yeah, I think he would have a good chance of getting the house.
Oh.
But wouldn't you have to show some type of ownership or something like that?
What do you mean? He would have to go to court.
That's what I mean, the squatter itself.
Right.
You said, if they've been living in that house for like 20-something years, like you just said, is that what you said?
Yeah, let's say 22 years he's been living in the house. The owner died and there were no heirs. But the person living in the house just kept paying all the bills.
And that would be all you need to show some type of ownership?
Well, you would have to show proof that you were living there that period of time.
Okay, proof that you've been living there, but not that you own the property.
No, you don't own the property. You would have to
Just
go to
living
court,
there.
have
Right.
the house awarded to you, but you've been living there and nobody has ever said anything to you. You've been paying all
Yeah,
the
it's
bills.
non-contested.
Right.
Yeah, but wouldn't the
Pay the
property be escheated then? At some
By
point?
that point, you hope
Well,
so.
not necessarily, because of the taxes and everything were paid. Maybe nobody noticed that the
Okay.
person died,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's been paid. Everything looks good. The guy's out there mowing the lawn. you know?
So that's sort of like adverse possession, right? It's like adverse possession, like.
Well, it would be adverse possession because you're a squatter, okay?
But the guy's dead. The owner's dead.
The squatter never had possession in the first place.
But who knows that? There's nobody to actually say like.
It's on the record. If they don't own the property to begin with, then
right. But there's no. There could have been an agreement that before he died, he could have left the property to him.
That would have been established in the court prior.
I think it's all different in all states.
Well, I think that would be different. I mean, if he had
Because in some states, if the squatter has been staying more than 10 years in the property, and they go to court and everything, it could become theirs if they could show they've been living there for 10 years.
Yeah, but we want to know what's going on in PA.
Yeah, I think I think it is 21 years, but you know what? Every state is different.
I think in PA too. I think the years are longer.
PA, the years are longer.
So how did you handle that, Janet, when you said you went to show a property someone was living in? What did you do?
Well, that's happened to me quite a few times. What am I going to do? I just go, oh, okay. Then I get in my car and I call up another realtor and like, listen, I had an appointment to show this house. And this guy says he moved in and he's just there. You got a squatter. You need to let your client know that.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I got to tell you, in Philadelphia, that happens more often than you think. I had a listing last winter and, yeah, I mean, these people, I don't know. It started out with, I had a phone call and this woman calls me and says, are you renting out this property? And I said, no, it's for sale. And she goes, I thought so, something seemed funny. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, I was in there. Another realtor showed me the house today and said it was for rent, but I wasn't sure I really believed them. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? It's not for rent. But she's talking to me. I'm on my computer and I'm looking up where the rent is showing us today on the property because normally I have it set up where I'm alerted if somebody's going to look at one of my listings. And I said to her, well, I'm going to tell you right now, there was no realtor in that house today, okay? And I jumped in my car so fast, I couldn't drive fast enough. And I get up to the property. I'm like, oh my God, where's my sign? And you know what, these signs, you pay for your signs, it's not cheap. So then I go up to the door and I'm like, oh my God, where's my lockbox? I was locked out of the house. And so I thought, oh my God, before I call my client and I get my client all frazzled over it, I called a friend of mine who is a locksmith. And I said, listen, I need locks changed in the door. I'm locked out. And I explained to him what happened. And he said, he says, my car's in the shop. I'm like, I don't care. I'm coming over. I'm going to pick you up. I drive over, basically throw him in the car, drive over there, and we changed those locks. But I never had, there's a security door there, the screen door, but I never had the key to it because the owner lost it God knows how long ago. And so we changed the locks in the back of the house, the front of the house. He gave me a key for the security door, locked that house up. And it was raining and I'm thinking, oh, this is a nightmare this night. So I put the keys in my pocket. After I saw it, that I called up my client and I said, listen, I have to tell you what happened today. And I explained the situation. And then, I said, but you don't need to worry. Got a locksmith out there. The house is totally secure. A few hours later, my client calls me and said, there's a woman at the house and she's sitting outside on the step and she's hysterical crying because she said she rented the house today through a realtor for $3,200 she gave her. It was a scam. Gave her $3,200 and now the key doesn't work and she can't get in the house. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So apparently whoever that was, they were there, I guess, all day showing the house. Now, I was there on Sunday night because I was staging the house. This was, I think, Tuesday. They operate that fast. And so the person that called me knew better. The person that was sitting there crying didn't know better. Not only did they give all their money to this other person, but they had children that were in the car. And my client calls me and says, what should I do? And I said, well, you need to go over there and talk that person. And so I met up with my client. We went to the police and we reported to the police. And this happened in Mount Airy, by the way. And so the police said, he said, we have a lot of this going on here, a lot of scams. And, people, they advertise their places in, when they're scamming, they'll advertise them in Craigslist. And, if it looks too good to be true, it usually is. No background check. I think I saw the ad, I copied it, but it said something like immediate occupancy, no background check. And, it got rented out to somebody, unfortunately. And my client, she was looking to sell the house. So after that, every time I had, of course, I didn't put another lockbox on. So every time I had somebody requesting a showing, I had to drive over there and let them in. And so, but the interesting thing was I had such a hard time selling that house. And it was a very small property, needed work, whatever. And, it was vacant. So there was a realtor that called me and said, listen, but I was having open houses. She said, if I send my client over there, would you honor my commission? I said, oh, yeah, send him over. Well, let me tell you, this young woman came in with her father, and I just really pitched the house. And, I said, oh, this is a wonderful home and perfect for, a first-time home buyer. And, and anything they found wrong with the house, I just kept saying, don't worry, we're going to make sure that's taken care of for you. And I literally sold that house for that other agent. And so I called my client up and I said, I have a perfect buyer for you. But we got a sale. So send over the agreement of sale to me and we'll get started. And I sold that house 5 weeks later. So, and believe me, I made it really easy for the other agent. So, and I think, and the other thing was my client, okay. So there's, it's called insulate brick, insulate brick. They don't make it anymore. And she was concerned about that. And I said, we're going to get that sided. And so my client says, I don't have the money to do that. There's no mortgage on the house. So she said, I don't have the money to do that. And I said, no problem. I knew this roofer, excellent work, very, very reasonable. He will do it and he will wait to get paid. And that's what we did. So anyway, yeah, squatters can happen. Now, it could have been if I didn't change those locks really quick, boy, that would have been a problem. And this is the problem. Okay. Keep in mind, I said last winter. Now, the problem would have been that that person would have set up their household if I didn't change the lock, because she did have a key to the original lock. My client couldn't just throw her out. She would have had to take her to court. But in the meantime, now we have the virus, right? And there's a there's a moratorium on eviction, which was supposed to end at the end of December. He continued it till September. So now, theoretically, if that woman got in there, she could have been squatting in there for at least 1.5 years. And guess what? There would be nothing my client could have done about that. Nothing. So now, depending on where I am selling in the city, I'm not putting lock boxes on all my properties. And I don't even put sale signs on all of my properties, because a sale sign is like a red flag. So I'll ask my clients, especially if it's vacant, do you want a sign on your property? And if they say yes, I'll say, are you really sure? Because let's talk about this. Okay. I would say that not everybody wants signs on their properties, even when they're living in there. This is very interesting. I don't want a sign on my property because I don't want my neighbor to know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay. I get that a lot. people, you know, you would think that they would want their neighbors to know what they're doing because maybe they know somebody that would want to buy the house. No. And, you know, the same thing with open houses. Do you want to open, well, especially today, nobody wants an open house today because of the virus. Let me tell you, when the virus first started, I knew there was a virus. I had just gotten a listing up on Red Line Road. And I said to the owner, I think it was the day after I took the listing, and I said, I'm doing an open house this weekend. And they said to me, are you sure it's so soon? I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes, absolutely. It was a vacant house. It was a really nice house. It had just been rehabbed. And so I did the open house, the first person. Okay, so this, we'll talk about this again in another chapter, but right in front of the property, there was a bus stop, right? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, all right, I don't know which way this is going to go. And I priced the house for I think it was $310,000. It was a twin. And the owner kept saying, oh, I don't think I'm going to get that much. And I said, look, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm pricing it. You know, just sign the contract. We can always lower it. So I do this open house. The first person that comes in says, oh, I love this house. You know what? There's a bus stop out front, and I don't want to deal with that because I already know there's going to be a bunch of people congregating there and all that. And I said, okay, no problem. Gave him my business card and, you know, accepted them as a client. Second person that comes into the house goes, oh my God, I love this house. I'm like, it's a great house, right? Oh yeah, it's a great house. And then she turns around and says to me, I can't believe my good luck. There's a bus stop right in front of the house. I could just roll right out of my bed and get on that bus and go right to work. And I'm like, right? Isn't that convenient? Loved it. And this is all within the hour. And I said to her, okay, I have a realtor. She did. I said, I'm going to call your realtor up right now. And I'm going to tell him how much you love this property. So I called up the other realtor and he goes, do you have showings? And I'm like, all day long, they're just flying in and out the door. And I said, if you really want your client to have this property, you know what to do. Just write it up. By the time I got home, I had a full price offer for my client, no seller's assist. And guess what? It was a cash sale. Okay. 3 weeks later, they bought the house. So, you know, you just really don't know. In that situation, what a lot of people would have seen as something negative, somebody saw something positive in it. But that particular house, even though I did have a lockbox on there, I drove over to that house every single day. And I made my presence known, turned the lights on, you know, I even sat there doing paperwork. I mean, I kind of made a presence there so nobody would get the idea that it's a vacant house and they could just like move in. I put plants outside. Yeah, I didn't want to go through that thing with the squatter. But as a realtor, can that happen to you? Yes, you really need to be careful of that. Okay, so we're going to go into, well, let me finish this one page, then we're going to go into the water rights. License is a personal privilege to enter the land of another for a specific purpose. A license differs from an easement in that it can be terminated or canceled. If a right to use another's property is given orally or informally, it generally is considered to be a license rather than a personal easement. A license ends on the death of either party or the sale of the land by the licensor. Examples of a license include permission to park in a neighbor's driveway and the privilege that a ticket to a theater or a sporting event conveys. Kind of like, hey, you know, you got this huge driveway and I don't like parking my car in the street. Can I use your driveway? And, you know, your friends and say, you know, I have upcoming tickets to a game and, you know, I have season tickets. I'll be happy to, anytime you want to go game, I'll give you a ticket. Now something ends it. I can't be parking on somebody else's driveway. Or if he says to me one day, hey, we're getting an RV and we need that space, well, there goes my license to use that driveway. Encroachments. An encroachment is the illegal extension of a building or a fence that extends beyond the land of the owner. It is usually disclosed by either a physical inspection of the property or a spot survey. As a rule, a spot survey is more accurate and reliable than a simple physical inspection. If a building encroaches on adjoining land, the neighbor may be able to either recover damages or secure removal of the portion of the building that encroaches. Encroachments that exceed a state's prescriptive period, however, may give rise to easements by prescription. Okay, so now we're going to talk about water rights. All right, we don't have too much more, I guess. Whether for agriculture, recreational, or other purposes, waterfront real estate has always been desirable. Each state has strict laws governing the ownership and the use of water as well as the adjacent land. The laws vary among states, but all are closely linked to climatic and topographical conditions. Where water is plentiful, states may rely on the simple parameters set by the common law doctrines of riparian and literal rights. Where water is scarce, the state may control all but limited domestic use of water according to the doctrine of prior appropriation. So we're going to talk about the riparian rights and we're going to talk about literal rights. So you're going to have to know what these are. This is something that when you're studying, you want to make sure that you're highlighting them, you're paying attention to them. Okay? So riparian rights. Riparian rights refers to rivers and streams and similar waterways. Literal rights refers to lakes, oceans, and similar commercially navigable waterways. So riparian rights, think of rivers and streams, smaller. When you're talking about literal rights, you're talking about larger bodies of water. Riparian rights are common law rights granted to owners of land lying along the course of a river, stream, or similar body of water. Although riparian rights are governed by laws that vary from state to state, they generally include the unrestricted right to use the water. As a rule, the only limitation on the owner's use is that such use cannot interrupt or alter the flow of the water or contaminate it in any way. In addition, an owner of land that borders a non-navigable waterway, that is, a body of water unsuitable for commercial boat traffic, owns the land under the water to the exact center of the waterway. So let's say you have a stream that divides your property with the property next door. You would own to the middle of the stream and they would own to the middle of their side of the stream. Land adjoining commercially navigable rivers, on the other hand, is usually owned to the water's edge, with the state holding title to the submerged land. Navigable waters are considered public highways on which the public has an easement or a right to travel. So let's say the Delaware River, okay, you would have a riparian right, and I think that would depend on the deed because you might have a right to the river extending out 20 feet. So maybe you could build a dock or, you know, if you have a boat or something. Okay, we're on page 80. And we're going to talk about the literal rights. Okay, just want to go over the riparian rights before we get to literal. You see here on the screen, you have Lot A and B, you have a stream that runs through the properties. They both go into like the middle. Lot A owns half, Lot B owns half. And then you have like the Delaware River, which would be the navigable river there. So Lot A owns the beginning, Lot B the beginning of the river, and Lot B the same thing. But they may have an easement or rights that go, you know, extend beyond that in order to build like a dock. So we'll go to literal rights, larger bodies of water, oceans, lakes. So literal rights closely related to riparian rights are the literal rights of owners whose land borders commercially navigable lakes, seas, and oceans. Owners with literal rights enjoy unrestricted use of available waters, but own the land adjacent to the water only up to the mean average, the high water mark. All land below this point is owned by the government. In some states, riparian and literal rights are appurtenant, attached to the land, and cannot be retained when the property is sold. The right to use the water belongs to whoever owns the bordering land, and the former owner cannot retain the right after the land is sold. Increase of loss of land by natural forces, and you need to know this. 1 minute, I gotta leave somebody back in. Okay. Increase in loss of land by natural forces. The amount of land an individual owns may be affected by the natural action of the water. An owner is entitled to all land created through accretion, which are increases in the land resulting from the deposit of soil by the water's action. You need to know that. Highlight the word accretion. Newly created deposits of soil, gravel, or sand upon the bank of the stream or river are called alluvion. Reliction is the newly created amount of land due to the permanent withdrawal of a river or sea. So, let's say you live by a river and the river is drying up. Now you have additional land. You only own your land up to a certain point, but now, just by nature, the river is being redirected, it's drying up, whatever. It's newly created land. So that is called reliction. All right. On the other hand, an owner may lose land through erosion. Erosion is the gradual and imperceptible wearing away of the land by natural forces such as wind, rain, and flowing water. Fortunately, erosion usually takes hundreds or even thousands of years to have any noticeable effect on a person's property. Flash floods or heavy winds, however, can increase the speed of erosion. If erosion is a slow natural process, avulsion is its opposite. Avulsion is the sudden removal of soil by an act of nature. It is an event that causes the loss of land much less subtly than erosion. An earthquake or a mudslide, for instance, can cause an individual's landholding to become much smaller or much larger very quickly. A riparian owner generally does not lose title to land lost by avulsion. Boundary lines stay the same, no matter how much soil is lost. In contrast, a riparian owner loses title to any land washed away by erosion. Doctrine of appropriation. In some states, the ownership and use of water are often determined by the doctrine of prior appropriation. Under this doctrine, the right to use any water, with the exception of limited domestic use, is controlled by the state rather than by the landowner adjacent to the water. To secure water rights in prior appropriation states, a landowner must demonstrate to a state agency that the owner's plans are for beneficial use, such as crop irrigation. If the state's requirements are met, the landowner receives a permit to use a specified amount of water for the limited purpose of the beneficial use. Although statutes governing prior appropriation vary from state to state, the priority of the water right is usually determined by the oldest recorded permit date. Under some state laws, once granted water rights attached to the land of the permit holder, the permit holder may sell such a water right to another party. Issuance of a water permit does not grant access to the water source. All access rights of way over the land of another, easements, must be obtained from the property owner. Leasehold estates. A tenant's right, hold on for 1 minute. Okay, we're going back to leasehold estates again. A tenant's right to possess real estate for the term of a lease is called a leasehold, less than freehold estate. A leasehold is generally considered personal property. When the tenant assumes many of the landowner's obligations under a lease for life or for more than 99 years, certain states give the tenant some of the benefits and privileges of ownership. Just as there are several types of freehold estates, there are different types or different kinds of leasehold estates. Now, when you're studying over the weekend, make sure that you're using your PDFs also. Okay. Okay. So you should be on page 82, estate tenancy for years. Estate for years is a leasehold estate that continues for a definite period. That period may be years, months, weeks, or even days. An estate for years always has a specific starting and ending date. When the estate expires, the tenant is required to vacate the premises and surrender possession to the owner. No notice is required to terminate an estate for years because the lease agreement states a specific expiration date. When the date comes, the lease expires and the tenant's rights are extinguished. If both parties agree, the estate for years may be terminated before the expiration date. Otherwise, neither party may terminate without showing that the contract has been breached. An extension of the tenancy requires that the contract be negotiated. As a characteristic of all leaseholds, an estate for years gives the tenant the right to occupy and use the leased property according to the terms and covenants in the lease agreement. Remember that a tenant has the right to use the premises for the entire lease term. That right is unaffected by the original lessor's death or the sale of the property unless the lease states otherwise. If the original lease provides for an option to renew, no further negotiation is required. The tenant merely exercises the option. I'm going to tell you, when you're doing leases, if you go to sell the property, well, first of all, when you have tenants in there, they're harder to sell. But if you go to sell the property and there is a lease, you need to know certain things. You need to know, when does that lease terminate? If it's month to month, then you need to know, do you have to give notice? And if so, is it 30 days notice? Is it 60 days notice? If you're dealing with an investor, they may think it's a good thing that somebody's in there. But if you're dealing with somebody, or not, depending on what they're paying for their rent, if it's under market, then they're probably going to put a clause in the contract stating that they would like the tenant to move out before settlement. You would be able to do that. Now, let's say you're selling a house in February, but you have a lease that doesn't terminate until November. If somebody's buying the house for their own personal use, they're probably not going to buy the house unless the tenant is agreeable and they would, they can move out. So you got to be careful when you're dealing with rentals, that rental situations that you're taking a listing contract on. And then you got to look at the lease, you got to understand the lease, and you got to see, has money been put into an escrow account? Because your client, if you had the buyer, your client would be entitled to that money coming to them at the time of settlement. And then that lease is reassigned also at the time of settlement to the new owner. All right, periodic estate, tenancy, an estate from period to period. On periodic tenancy is created when landlord and tenant enter an agreement for indefinite time. That is, the estate does not contain a specific expiration date. Such a tenancy is created initially to run for a definite term, for instance, month to month, week to week, or year to year, but continues indefinitely until proper notice of termination is given. Rent is payable as defined at defined intervals. A periodic tenancy is characterized by continuity because it is automatically renewable under the original terms of the agreement until one of the parties gives notice to terminate. In effect, the payment and acceptance of rent extend the lease for another period. A month-to-month tenancy, for example, is created when the tenant takes possession with no definite termination date and pays monthly rent. Periodic tenancy is often used in residential leases. An example, a landlord and the tenant have agreed that the apartment can be rented by the month without specifying the number of months the lease will run. The lease simply continues until either the landlord or the tenant gives proper notice to terminate. If the original agreement provides for the conversion from an estate for years to a periodic tenancy, no negotiations are necessary and the tenant simply exercises the option. An estate from period to period can be created when a tenant with an estate for years remains in possession or holds over after the lease term expires. If no new lease agreement has been made, a holdover tenancy is created. The landlord may evict the tenant or treat the holdover tenant as one who holds a periodic tenancy. The landlord's acceptance of rent usually is considered conclusive proof of the landlord's acquiescence to the periodic tenancy. The courts customarily rule that a tenant who holds over can do so for a term equal to the term of the original lease, provided the period is for 1 year or less. For example, a tenant with a lease for 6 months would be entitled to a new 6-month tenancy. However, if the original lease was for 5 years, the holdover tenancy could not exceed 1 year. Some lease stipulates that in the absence of a renewal agreement, a tenant who holds over does so as a month-to-month tenant. To terminate a periodic estate, either the landlord or the tenant must give proper notice. The form and timing of the notice are usually stated in the written lease agreement. But the Pennsylvania Landlord-Tenant Act also specifies the time required for notice in a variety of circumstances. Normally, the notice must be given 1 period in advance. For example, to terminate an estate from week to week, 1 week's notice is required. To terminate an estate from month to month, 1 month's notice is required. For an estate from year to year, however, the notice requirements vary from 2 months to 6 months. Estate at will. An estate at will gives the tenant the right to possess property with the landlord's consent for an unspecified or uncertain term. An estate at will is an tenancy of indefinite duration. It continues until it is terminated by either party giving proper notice. No definite initial period is specified, as is the case of a periodic tenancy. An estate at will automatically terminates by the death of either the landlord or the tenant. It may be created by express agreement or by operation of law. During a tenancy at will, the tenant has all the rights and obligations of a lessor-lessee relationship, including payment of rent at regular intervals. As a practical matter, tenancy at will is really used in a written agreement and is viewed skeptically by the courts. An example, a landlord tells a tenant that at the end of the lease, someone else will be moving into the apartment. The landlord gives the tenant the option to continue to rent until the new tenant is ready to move. If the tenant agrees, a tenancy at will is created. Estate at sufferance. An estate at sufferance arises when the tenant who lawfully possessed real property continues in possession of the premises without the landlord's consent after the rights expire. This estate can arise when a tenant for years fails to surrender possession at the expiration of the lease. When a tenant fails to surrender possession or holds over, the tenant is responsible for the payment monthly rent at existing terms and rate. If a lease contains a holdover clause, that lease governs the rights of both the landlord and the tenant. If a lease does not contain such a clause, then estates law governs and typically offers 3 options. the landlord can accept the rent offered by the tenant, thereby creating a new tenancy under conditions of the original lease, a holdover tenancy. If the original lease term was greater than 1 year, generally the new tenancy is limited to 1 year. The landlord can treat the tenant as a tenant at sufferance by either objecting to the tenant holding over or informing the tenant of such treatment, thus creating a month-to-month or a periodic tenancy. The landlord receives rent, and both parties have to provide notice within a certain period of terminating the arrangement. The landlord can treat the tenant as a trespasser and proceed with an eviction and damages action. Under this situation, the landlord must comply with the notice to quit requirements in the lease and the state laws regarding the landlord-tenant relationship. Okay, so we have enough time to take the quiz, and we're going to get started. So, the right of government body to take ownership of real estate for public benefit is escheat, eminent domain, condemnation, or police power?
Eminent domain.
Okay. A portion of Persons A building was inadvertently built on Persons B's land. This is called an encroachment, avulsion, easement, or accretion.
A.
Yes. Under what authority may municipalities and counties enact legislation to preserve order and to protect public health? States Enabling Act, permission conferred by the federal government, permitted by common law, or the right of eminent domain? A. Your neighbors use your driveway to reach a garage located on their property. Your attorney explains that ownership of the neighbor's real estate includes an easement appurtenant, giving them the right to do this. Your property is the dominant tenement, a defeasible estate, and a leasehold interest, or the servient tenement.
Servient tenant.
D. It's D. Which of the following is classified as a life estate? An estate pour autre vie, an estate held by lease, an estate without condition, a fee simple estate.
A.
Yes. Many states determine water use by allocating water to users who hold recorded beneficial use permits. This type of water use privilege is called riparian rights, literal rights, the doctrine of prior appropriation, or the doctrine of highest and best use.
C.
Yes. All of the following are powers of the government except. Okay, remember we talked about this, Pete? Okay, condemnation, police power, eminent domain, or taxation?
A.
A. Property deeded to a school for educational purposes only conveys a fee simple absolute, fee simple on condition precedent, leasehold interest, fee simple on condition subsequent.
D.
Yes. A man conveys ownership of his residence to his daughter, but reserves for himself a life estate in the residence. The interest the daughter owns during her father's lifetime is pour autre vie, a future interest, a current interest, or a leasehold.
B.
Current interest.
A future interest.
Future.
Which is a characteristic of a appurtenant easement? Runs with the land, terminates with the sale of the property, is a right of way for a utility company, is revocable.
A.
Is A. Where is the property line generally located for the Pennsylvania property owners whose land borders Lake Erie? The mean high watermark varies according to the water level of the Lake Erie, the middle of Lake Erie, the mark of the lowest water level.
The A. The high water mark.
A.
Okay, the acquisition of land through deposit of soil or sand washed up by water is called accretion, avulsion, erosion, or condemnation?
A.
Under what conditions may cause property ownership to revert to the state? Owner dies without a will or heirs. The heirs refuse to accept the property. Owner's heirs cannot come to agreement over control of the property, or the heirs do not have enough money to pay the estate taxes.
A.
As the river changed course over the last few years, a property owner gained another couple of acres. Since his land description read to the high water mark of the river, what is the term for this newly created increase in land? Avulsion, alluvion, reliction, erosion, or accretion?
B.
Yes. All of the following will terminate an easement except non-use of a prescriptive easement, adverse possession by the owner of the servient tenement, abandonment of easement, or release of the right of easement to the dominant tenement. What is it?
D.
It's
D.
D. A person who has complete control over a parcel of real estate is said to own a fee simple estate, life estate, leasehold estate, defeasible fee estate.
A.
Yeah, it's the highest
What
degree of
question? I'm
ownership.
sorry. What question were you on to step?
16.
Okay. All right.
What did we answer for 16?
16 is A. Okay, so in your agreement of sale on the second page, right, it will, there's a section there that will show you how the deed is how the property is being deeded over. It already has in there fee simple. It's the highest degree of ownership that you're conveying. If it's anything other than that, it will say, there'll be a blank space in there, okay? So if nothing is written in there, it's automatically going to be conveyed over as a fee simple estate. After a tenant's lease expired, the tenant neither vacated nor negotiated a renewal lease. The landlord has declared that she does not want the tenant to remain in the building, and the tenant holds what? An estate for years, a periodic estate, an estate at will, or an estate at sufferance.
I didn't get that one done. Is it B?
Okay. You can think of, it is D. You can think of, okay, so the landlord doesn't want them anymore, and they're holding over. The landlord is suffering. So it's an estate at sufferance. The tenant's lease,
Okay.
the tenant's lease will expire in 2 weeks, at which time the tenant will move into larger quarters on the other side of town. To terminate the agreement, the tenant must give the landlord prior notice. The landlord must give the tenant prior notice. Nothing needs to be done. The agreement will terminate automatically. Both parties must renegotiate the original agreement.
C.
A.
C.
D.
Which one is it? D?
C. Nothing
Oh,
needs to
C.
be done.
Okay, that's all I said. Yeah.
Mhm. The leasehold interest that automatically renews itself at each expiration is the tenant for years, tenant from period to period, tenancy at will, or tenancy at sufferance.
C. No.
B.
Okay, so you have a lease. Your lease is going for a year, but there's language that's built into the contract, your lease, and it'll say something like, at the end of 1 year, if neither party has given each other notice, the lease will continue month to month, right? And then you can stay there as long as you want until somebody gives you notice, or until you give the landlord notice, but it's for a period of time. So what do you think it's called?
Period to period.
B, period to period. The couple's apartment lease has expired, but their landlord has told them that they may remain on the premises until a sale of the building is closed. The tenants will be charged their normal monthly rental during this period. The tenancy held by the tenants is called,
Say that, Will.
yes, a state at will. And you got through 4 and 5. You do have the PDFs for 6 and 7. If you, studying over the weekend, you should be able to get through Unit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My suggestion is you go through your PDFs. If there's something you don't understand, read your book. Also, read your definitions. You want to be able to, your vocabulary. In the beginning of each chapter, there are words there that you don't understand the meaning of. Go to the back of your book and look at the vocabulary, or go to the section of the book where it talks about that specific word to give you further definition. And then go through your key points, which is a summary of what you should know in that chapter. And then if you struggled with any of these questions in the quiz, go through them and make sure that you can answer every single one of them. Okay? And pace yourself. You have 4 days. Okay? So 1 is easy. You should be able to breeze through that. 2 and 3 was challenging. You may want to do them over the weekend. And 4, not bad. You can knock that out in a short period of time. And then 5, I don't think that was that bad either. But you don't have to read every single page. Read what you don't know. What you do know, you might make a little note in there just to remind yourself when you're reviewing. But if there was something that was more complicated for you, make sure that you read it, you understand it. Okay? And then I'm either going to be sending you links over the weekend for what we skipped over because we couldn't get those videos to work, because I think they would help you. Or we'll even send you PowerPoint if they're not that large, and I can get them over to you. Okay? So we're exactly at 10 o'clock, and it's time to end. Does anybody have any questions before you go?
I have a suggestion, if you don't mind.
I love suggestions, and I don't mind.
Okay. Actually, I believe it will make it easier for most if each of the questions, at least most of the questions and answers, will be dissected. What I mean by this is, like the way you explained what an estate assurance is, that will help. I think most of us to fully understand the answers to the questions and why it's like a repeat, and at the same time it helps to understand better the answers.
Do you mean like give rationale for why it is that answer?
Correct.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I can on some of them, but some of them are just pure memorization. They just are, You'll never be able to answer those questions unless you know the definitions or the meaning. Once you understand your vocabulary, you'll have an easier time answering the questions. Okay? So keep in mind, we're breezing through these chapters, but we're going to be doing a total review before your test, which is actually going to go back to chapter 1, basically, and we're going to pull out, what's important and what you're going to need to know. Okay? So even though you're reviewing this and you're studying it, you're going to be going over this again. Okay? My suggestion would be, if you can, get into groups. I think that helps. It might not be for everybody, but for, some of you, I think it might. If you feel that you're really struggling, don't call me, and I will give you, private time to review things and to explain things in further detail if you didn't understand something. Okay?
Janet, I have a quick question. Is the riparian rights and the The other one, I'm sorry. what is it?
Literal rights.
Are they really important in the exam? To remember?
Okay.
I had someone give me an example about the Mississippi River. I was telling everyone else, I just can't remember fully the whole extent to it. But it was a really, I remember this because I was doing like separate classes with a director from a different school, and they gave me a really good example on the Mississippi River last year, but I just couldn't remember it fully on how he explains everything. Have you ever had that example before, or?
No.
Okay.
You have no idea?
It was something, he was saying something of how it narrows down and everything with the government rights, and he just, the way he explained it, it just made it much easier for me. I'm gonna see if I find stuff. If not, I'm gonna send them an email.
Find it, and I'll ask around and see if anybody else knows anything about it.
That's how I remember, it's like speaking about that conversation because of the Mississippi River. It just hit me with that. So.
Was it an acronym or?
No, he was just basically saying how the river narrows down, and talked about the riparian rights and everything. So it made it much easier the way he explains everything. But I'm gonna see if I have it, because he wrote it down for me. If not, I'll shoot him an email and see if he can send it over.
Okay. So you mean like where it's narrow?
Yeah, how it narrows down from state to state, and
so in every state it would be different, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if you own a property and it's very narrow, you would own to the middle of the river, but then when it gets bigger and they run like commercial, you know, like there's paddle boats down it, and they're, you know, the gambling boats and whatever, then it would vary, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I'm gonna see if if I find it. If I find it, I'll send it over.
Okay. I think it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? No.
I'm good,
Okay.
thank you.
You have, okay, so you have 4 days off, you know, study where you can, and I'll send over the links, and then anybody else that wants to contact me tomorrow, I'll be available, or even over the weekend, okay?
Sounds good. Have a good night,
All
everyone.
right, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Enjoy the rest of your evening. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
All right, good night.